I ran about 60 miles before I finally stopped, standing on a big rock at the base of a stone mountain. I felt relieved. The rocks all around made it hard for anyone to tunnel up from underground to ambush me again. I checked on Qin Sanhai. He was still pale, but said he was fine. The monk earlier had only frozen him with an ice spell, and since Qin Sanhai was a skilled fighter, his internal energy kept his organs safe. He was just cold, nothing serious. I told him to lead the way so we could leave this dangerous area quickly. He agreed, and we headed out. After traveling a long distance, I made it back to our camp. I brought the head I had collected in a cloth bag and placed it on the table in front of General Yang Yulong. Mission accomplished. Please inspect it, I said. Yang Yulong and his advisor Chun, he both looked at the head. Chun he praised me, saying the general was lucky to have me. But Yang Yulong noticed my injuries, especially the big gash on my shoulder. He asked if the Imperial Guards had done that. I said no, and told him about the monk and the Taoist I ran into on the road. Yang Yulong's expression turned serious. His advisor Chun he identified them as Fa Hong the monk and Qinya the Taoist, from two hidden sects, Tianlong Temple and Wuliang Temple, that had secretly joined the Yellow Turban rebels. Yang Yulong said the rebels must be planning something big if they were gathering these fighters. He looked worried. Qin he advised that we should leave Fengzhou quickly since the enemy was stronger than us. He suggested we retreat to Qingshi province and join forces with General Su Sheng there. Yang Yulong agreed and told me to summon all the deputy generals immediately. Before I left, he stopped me and said he owed me a reward for my achievement. He promised to record my merit and give me a proper reward once we reached Qingshi province. He also said he would find me a new mount. I told him his gifts of armor and a martial arts manual were already more than enough, but he insisted that earned rewards must be given. I went and called the 6 deputy generals, Xiong Yud, Xiahou Feng, Li Hu, Zhang Bao, Wang Yanlong, and Geng Biao. They all gathered in the main tent. Yang Yulong gave them orders with a grave expression, and everyone became tense and alert. Soon the whole army began to stir. Our entire army packed up camp in one go. Everyone was silent and serious, moving fast with no talking. General Yang Yulong gave me and Xiong Yud orders to lead 1,500 soldiers to protect the supply wagons and the soldiers' families heading west. Xiahou Feng took 500 soldiers ahead to Qingshi province to ask for reinforcements. Li Hu and Zhang Bao each took 10,000 troops to guard the rear and watch our sides. The rest followed Yang Yulong's main column. The army moved incredibly fast and quiet, nothing but footsteps. It was the 15th of July, hot weather, around dusk, with golden light covering everything. Meanwhile, dozens of miles away, the enemy was watching us. 2 strange Taoist priests, one with a giant copper ear who could hear from far away, and one with glowing golden eyes who could see great distances, reported our movements to the rebel leader Li Rufeng. They told him Yang Yulong had split his forces into 4 groups. Li Rufeng smiled, saying Yang Yulong was walking right into his trap. He ordered his men to also deal with Qingshi province, so General Su Sheng couldn't interfere. Back with our group, I was shirtless except for my Qixin armor and shorts, carrying my huge axe on my shoulder, eating a pear. It was too hot. I checked my stats. My height was 251 centimeters, and my weight was 910 jin. I wasn't fat, though. All that weight came from my bones being transformed to be incredibly dense and heavy, like steel. I figured I could accept growing up to 3 meters tall, but no more. My Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist needed just 90 more experience points to reach the next level. Once I mastered it fully, I could reshape my bones and shrink my body. Even at the beginner stage, this technique had already boosted my strength, defense, eyesight, hearing, and awareness. It also contained a special tiger aura that could intimidate enemies with just a look. Xiong Yud was riding ahead, saying how lucky it was that General Yang acted fast. Others mentioned it was thanks to my information about the Tianlong Temple people that the general knew the enemy was planning to strike. Xiong Yud looked back at our long line of hundreds of supply wagons and tens of thousands of family members. We could only travel a few dozen miles per day. He sighed and accepted that this journey wouldn't be peaceful. Suddenly, while walking through the forest, I sensed something wrong. I heard messy, chaotic sounds ahead. I called out to stop. Xiong Yud pulled his horse up and asked what was wrong. I told him I heard strange noises. Before he could even send scouts, a massive roar erupted from the forest ahead. Countless enemy soldiers came charging out, screaming battle cries. A dark-faced general in armor, wielding a huge long blade, rode out laughing like thunder, shouting that our movements had been discovered by his commander and telling Xiong Yud to surrender. Xiong Yud was shocked, but reacted fast, shouting for everyone to form up. He recognized the enemy general, Wu Kai, and charged forward on his horse, swinging his axe. Wu Kai laughed cruelly and charged back. Their weapons clashed with a huge explosion of sound and force. Yellow turban soldiers swarmed from everywhere, screaming battle cries. Before they even reached us, endless waves of arrows rained down like a storm. Our side suffered terrible losses instantly. We only had 1,500 real soldiers. The rest were tens of thousands of family members who panicked and ran everywhere, crying and screaming. It got worse. Several enemy generals rode in on war horses, stabbing through the chaos with their spears. They were all skilled fighters. Bodies were torn apart left and right. Even Xiong Yud's deputy, Sun Bao, was killed. One spear strike blew his whole body apart. I was furious. I dodged a wave of arrows, then launched myself out from behind a wagon. The ground cracked under my feet as I charged. I swung my giant axe at the general who had just killed Sun Bao. He tried to block with his iron spear, but I split it in two with one hit. The force sent him flying, ripping open his chest and stomach. His insides spilled out. He was dead. The other enemy generals saw this, and 4 of them charged at me at once, all skilled fighters at the 5th level. The Tiger Demon technique was filling my head with killing urges, pushing me to slaughter. I roared and charged straight at them instead of retreating. Li Dao is here. Who dares fight me? I used my 100 ghost kill technique and smashed my axe down on the first one who reached me. It felt like a mountain crashing on him. His spear broke, he died, and his horse died too, all destroyed in one blow. The other 3 attacked from 3 directions at once, their spears glowing with powerful energy, creating a whirlwind around me. But I felt no fear. My skin glowed like bronze, my veins bulged with strength. I swept my axe in a wide arc using my heavens and earth technique. My axe smashed into all 3 spears at once. The impact shattered their grip, broke the bones in their hands, and sent their weapons flying. Their horses panicked and tried to flee. The 3 generals were terrified and tried to escape, but I felt no backlash from the clash. I was already charging after them. I caught up and cut them all down one after another, blood spraying, bodies flying. After killing them, I rushed into the crowd of enemies like a tiger coming down a mountain, axe in hand. The whole forest was in chaos. Thousands of yellow turban soldiers were attacking from everywhere. The tens of thousands of soldiers' family members we were escorting scattered in all directions, screaming and crying. Blood, bodies, and fire were everywhere. I cut down another group of enemies and looked around. The supply wagons we had been protecting were already burning. The rebels had set them on fire. Flames lit up the entire forest. I tried to rush over to put out the fires, but the heat was too intense. Even with my body, I couldn't get close without feeling searing pain. I cursed and threw myself at another group of rebels, killing them in a fury. Then I heard the sounds of fierce fighting nearby and turned to look. Xiong Yud was on his horse, locked in a desperate battle with Wu Kai, the dark-faced enemy general with the long blade. After hundreds of exchanges, Xiong Yud was running out of strength. When he saw me coming, his face lit up. He shouted for me to kill the enemy. I roared and charged, swinging my axe. The enemy general heard me and turned around in alarm. Even his horse panicked and tried to leap away. But my axe was already sweeping in. It cut off both of the horse's back legs. The horse crashed to the ground in a spray of blood. The dark-faced general rolled off and tried to run. He looked back and saw my massive body charging at him like a whirlwind. He screamed that he was done for. Before he could even raise his blade, my axe swept across his neck. His head flew high into the air, blood spraying like a fountain. Xiong Yud grabbed the head, leaped up on his horse, and bellowed so loud it echoed for miles. "Your general has been killed by my vanguard. Surrender now." The yellow turban soldiers froze and looked around for their leaders. They had brought 6 generals total, but now they couldn't find a single one. The ground was covered with nothing but corpses. I raised my bloody axe and shouted that all their mounted generals had died by my hand, and asked if they wanted to join them. That broke them. Someone ran first, and then they all fled, dropping weapons and flags, disappearing into the forest. What remained was devastating. Bodies everywhere, flags fallen, most of our hundreds of supply wagons burned. The family members had scattered, and only a small number stayed nearby, crying. Xiong realized the situation was bad. If Li Ruffing knew we were retreating and had ambushed us, then General Yang Yulong was surely being attacked too. I asked if we should go help the general. He said we should first escort the remaining supplies and families to Qingshi province, then come back to support the general. I pointed out that we had too few men. Even if we went back, it might not help. He said the general had treated him with great kindness, and even knowing it meant death, he had to repay that debt. Then he asked if I was planning to desert. I said no. We organized people to put out fires and called back the scattered families. Many were injured, which slowed us down even more. We could only go a dozen miles before needing long rests. Even marching through the night, by the next morning we had only covered a few dozen miles. Then at dawn, a scout galloped back with bad news. A large force of thousands of rebels was blocking the road ahead on the right side. Xiong Yud's face changed. He immediately ordered everyone to take the small path on the left, and we rushed that way. About 10 miles away, the enemy was watching us from a hilltop. They were angry that their 6 generals had failed to stop us, but their leader with a bushy beard said we couldn't escape. Their commander's formation was already set up. He ordered his men to herd us toward the formation. Soon arrows started raining down from behind us. People screamed and cried, running everywhere. Xiong Yud told me to come fight the attackers with him while everyone else kept moving. We charged back, but the enemy wouldn't engage. They just shot arrows from a distance and retreated into the forest whenever we got close. We couldn't chase them, so we turned back to escort our people. This kept happening from every direction. Each time we charged, they ran. I noticed they were deliberately forcing us to change our route, pushing us westward. I told Xiong Yud. He realized west was where Yang Yulong's main army was. The enemy was herding us toward there. He also wondered why Li Hu and Zhang Bao's forces, who were supposed to guard the flanks, hadn't come to help us. We ran from morning until noon, finally breaking out of the forest into a low hilly path. But the moment we entered, everything changed. Wind howled from all directions, dark clouds rolled in, the ground shook, and yellow sand filled the air everywhere. It was like stepping into a nightmare. Xiong Yud recognized it immediately. It was a formation set up by contract masters. He called it the 8-Gate Golden Lock Formation. Then things got worse. Soldiers started shouting that their inner energy had vanished. Xiong Yud felt it too. All his blood energy drained away, leaving only his raw physical body. He explained the formation suppressed all types of energy, inner force, blood energy, even spiritual power. He asked how I was doing. I told him my blood energy was suppressed too, but my raw strength was still there. Because my bones and muscles had been transformed, my brute force wasn't affected by the formation. I clenched my fist and felt my power was still intact, enough that even 5th-level fighters couldn't stop me. Xiong Yud shouted for everyone to find the exit fast. The families stopped crying and pushed through the pain, walking as fast as they could. But soon we heard thundering hoofbeats ahead. Through the swirling sand, a huge force of yellow-turbaned soldiers appeared, all armed, on horseback, completely unaffected by the formation. Their energy and power still worked. Their leader laughed, identified us as Yang Yulong's supply convoy led by Xiong Yud, and ordered them to kill us all. Xiong Yud screamed to break through, but our side was being slaughtered. Without their powers, our soldiers were helpless. The families panicked and scattered. The blinding sandstorm made it impossible to see, and almost immediately Xiong Yud lost track of most of our people. While we were trapped in the formation, the enemy was celebrating outside. The bushy-bearded general reported that our supply convoy had been driven into the formation. Li Ruffeng, wearing golden armor, watched everything from a high mountain peak, where he could see the entire formation despite the swirling sand. His men told him the 8-Gate Golden Lock Formation was working perfectly. Everyone inside had lost their powers. A rough-looking general named Zhang Mao asked to go in and fight, carrying a big axe. Li Ruffeng let him go but ordered him to capture Yang Yulong alive. Over 10 more groups of enemy soldiers charged into the formation after him. Li Ruffeng also received a message that our supply convoy had been pushed into the formation too. Except for Xiahou Feng, Yang Yulong's entire army was now trapped. Inside the formation, Yang Yulong was in terrible shape. Out of his tens of thousands of soldiers, only a few thousand remained near him after several enemy attacks. The rest were scattered. His advisor Chun, he explained the formation had 8 gates and needed at least 16 contract masters working together to operate. The only way out was finding the life gate. Deputy General Wang Yanlong wanted to charge out, but Chun, he said the formation was endless and they would only get more lost. He suggested holding out for a few days until Xiahou Feng's reinforcements arrived. If reinforcements could drive away the contract masters guarding the gates, the formation would collapse. Yang Yulong agreed. But then Zhang Mao's forces charged in, screaming to capture Yang Yulong alive. Yang Yulong ordered them to retreat while fighting, not to clash head-on since their powers were suppressed. Meanwhile, I had just fought my way out of a group of enemies, but when I looked back, I had lost track of Xiong Yud. I thought about it quickly, then gritted my teeth and turned back into the chaos to find him. I immediately ran into another group of yellow-turbaned soldiers charging at me. I swung my axe like a giant windmill, plowing through them, screams everywhere, bodies flying, blood spraying. My huge axe was unstoppable, wounding anyone it touched and killing anyone it hit squarely. Just as I scattered that group, another enemy general rode up on horseback with a big spear. Shouting his name was Yi Chun and challenging me. He thrust his spear at me, the weapon wrapped in thick, dark energy with a 3-foot glow at the tip, looking terrifying. I was running through the chaos when an enemy general named Yi Chun charged at me on horseback, thrusting his spear. He thought I was weakened by the formation like everyone else. He was wrong. I swung my axe and it hit like a mountain. His spear flew from his shattered hands, and before he could react, my axe swept across his neck. His head flew off. His horse tried to flee, but I grabbed the reins and pulled it to a stop. I climbed on, though my body was so huge my feet nearly touched the ground. I rode off to search for Xiong Yud. He had been good to me, and I didn't want him killed. Also, I was lost in the formation and figured finding him was my best chance of escaping. I rode around calling his name, but the swirling yellow sand blocked my vision. I couldn't find him anywhere. I ran into several groups of yellow-turbaned soldiers along the way, but I killed them all easily. Finally, I decided Xiong Yud might already be dead, and I needed to focus on finding a way out. Then I heard a shout from some bushes. It was the advisor Chen He. I was shocked to see him. He was supposed to be with Yang Yulong. He was wounded, covered in blood, and told me to go save the general immediately. Yang Yulong was trapped in the formation and being hunted. I asked how the enemy could use their powers inside the formation while we couldn't. Chen He said they must have drunk a special holy water before entering that made them immune. He told me Yang Yulong had broken through toward the east. I didn't waste any more time and rode east. I saw bodies and broken weapons scattered everywhere. The sand kept shifting and I couldn't tell directions. I killed several more groups of enemies while searching. Then I heard shouting from the right, "Don't let Yang Yulong escape," and "Capture Yang Yulong alive." I pulled my horse around and rode toward the noise. From a hilltop, I saw Yang Yulong dozens of meters away. He looked terrible, covered in blood, with 7 or 8 arrows stuck in his back, riding alone on his blue horse. For enemy generals were chasing him closely, with hundreds of soldiers behind them. Not a single one of his own men was with him. I saw he was about to die. I roared and charged, swinging my axe. "General, keep going. I'll handle the pursuit." "Li Dao is here." My horse leaped dozens of meters through the air. I came crashing down on the lead pursuer like a human elephant falling from the sky. He was a 5th-level fighter with a spear, almost about to stab Yang Yulong. He had no time to react. My axe swept through him, splitting his body in 2. Blood sprayed everywhere. The other 3 generals pulled their horses to a stop in shock, staring at me. The 3 enemy generals were stunned by my size and the fact that my strength wasn't suppressed by the formation. I didn't give them time to think. I swung my axe with full force, and in one exchange, all 3 of their weapons went flying, their hands bleeding. I followed up with rapid strikes and killed all 3 of them. Then I charged into the remaining soldiers, scattered them, and rode after Yang Yulong. Outside the formation, Li Ruffling was watching from a hilltop. He saw what I did and was shocked. His general Bai Yunlong recognized me as the same person from Xiong Yud's group and noted my body had grown even bigger. Li Ruffling called me a true tiger general, and ordered his men to capture me alive. He wanted to meet me personally and possibly recruit me. I caught up to Yang Yulong at a rocky slope. He was deathly pale, gasping for air. His blue horse had already died beneath him, covered in arrows, wounds, and poison marks. The horse had carried him to safety before collapsing. I jumped off my horse and told him to take it. He refused, saying it was over. He was surrounded and defeated. He told me to leave him and escape on my own. He said if I headed west, found a big mountain, circled it twice, I would find the life gate and escape the formation. I ignored him. I grabbed him, put him on the horse, and slapped it forward. I followed on foot with my axe. He shouted at me to abandon him. I shouted back, asking if he thought I was someone who feared death. Leaving him made no sense anyway. I had killed too many enemy generals, and they would hunt me regardless. If I got Yang Yulong out, his 10th level power might recover and help us both. Enemies kept coming. A general named Niu Gao charged at us with a 3-pointed blade. He expected only Yang Yulong, but I burst out from behind and split him in two with one blow. I took his horse and kept pushing forward. Another general appeared. I killed him in one strike too. Then 4 more came from all directions, thrusting their spears at me. While I fought them, soldiers threw hooks and chains at Yang Yulong, pulling him off his horse and dragging him across the ground. I was furious. I pushed my body to its absolute limit, muscles bulging like a war god. My axe swept through all 4 generals. 2 died instantly, 2 were badly wounded. I charged toward Yang Yulong, but chains and hooks caught me and my horse, pulling the horse down. I leaped off and ran on foot, chopping apart every soldier holding a chain. 3 more generals attacked me with a spear, an axe, and a halberd, surrounded by swarms of soldiers. I swung my axe wildly, cutting through them like vegetables. More soldiers rushed in, but I let out a roar so loud it nearly burst the eardrums of untrained men. They scattered in terror. No one dared block me. I broke through, grabbed the badly wounded Yang Yulong, threw him on my back, and ran. In that one battle, I had killed dozens of enemy generals, knocked down 3 battle flags, and seized 3 lances. I moved through them like no one was even there. Outside the formation, Li Ruffing was watching everything and couldn't believe what he saw. He said Yang Yulong didn't deserve to have such a fierce warrior. He admired my loyalty and wanted me for himself. His generals were angry and wanted to come kill me, but Li Ruffing had already ordered them to capture me alive. One general assured him that Zhang Mao, a 6th level body cultivation expert, was heading my way and would surely defeat me. I broke through the encirclement with Yang Yulong on my back, covered head to toe in dried blood like a blood coat. Even my axe was so slick with blood, it was hard to grip. After running over 10 miles, I spotted a dark shape through the yellow sand, a hill. I asked Yang Yulong if this was where the life gate was. He said yes and told me to circle the hill as planned. But before I could reach it, enemy soldiers swarmed in from all sides. Their leader was Zhang Mao, a huge, dark-faced man with a black dragon-patterned axe, riding a black horse. His muscles were so swollen, they nearly burst his armor. His blood energy burned around his body like fire, forming a solid armor layer on his skin. This was the power of a 6th level body cultivator, truly impenetrable, blade-proof, and fireproof. For the first time, I felt real danger. He came at me like a beast, not a man. But I had no choice. I tightened every muscle and bone to their limit, stomped the ground so hard it cracked, leaped up, and swung my axe at him. Our axes collided with a deafening crash, sparks flying everywhere. The shockwave blasted sand and rocks in all directions. My palms stung and my arms went numb. I staggered back 4 or 5 steps. But Zhang Mao's horse nearly collapsed too, forced back even farther than me. His hands were also hurting. He was shocked and furious that I had pushed him back more than he pushed me. Yang Yulong kept shouting at me to put him down and run. I ignored him completely. Zhang Mao charged again. We traded blow after blow, me on foot, him on horseback. Sparks flew, sand swirled, the noise was deafening. Everyone around us just stared. Even Li Ruffing outside the formation grew tense. His advisor told him to stop the fight before both fighters got hurt, and Li Ruffing sent men in. But they were too late. During our furious exchange, I finally smashed Zhang Mao's axe so hard it bent from a straight line into a V shape. My own axe blade was dented and chipped, but it still slammed into Zhang Mao's body, sending him flying off his horse with blood spraying from his mouth. He crashed to the ground with the sound of breaking bones. I roared at the top of my lungs. Who dares fight me to the death? The sound rolled across the battlefield. Every yellow-turbaned soldier around me trembled with fear. Someone ran first, then everyone panicked and fled, throwing away helmets and weapons, trampling each other in their rush to escape. Some soldiers grabbed the fallen Zhang Mao and carried him away despite his angry protests. Not a single person dared stay. After scaring everyone away, I turned and kept running with Yang Yulong on my back, circling the hill. I was exhausted, tired and hungry, pushed to my absolute limit, holding on through sheer willpower. Outside the formation, Li Rufeng saw I was about to escape and ordered his men to block the life gate. Yang Yulong kept telling me to drop him and save myself, saying there would be ambushes outside the gate, and I was at my limit. I told him, jade can be shattered, but its whiteness cannot be changed. Bamboo can be burned, but its joints cannot be destroyed. Even if the body dies, one's name can live on in history, so what is there to fear? I told him to stop talking. Yang Yulong was deeply moved by my words. After circling the hill twice, the environment started changing rapidly. The yellow sand began clearing, and the suppression faded. Yang Yulong shouted that the life gate was ahead. I charged through with everything I had. It felt like breaking through a thin membrane of water. The suppression vanished completely. Suddenly, I was on a mountain path surrounded by green trees and grass, birds singing, evening sunlight fading. It was like a completely different world from the killing field inside the formation. Yang Yulong jumped off my back. His full power had returned. Without hesitation, he grabbed me and ran at incredible speed, his feet barely touching the grass tips, like he weighed nothing at all. When he heard hoofbeats ahead, he instantly changed direction. At the 10th level, nobody could stop him unless Li Rufeng himself showed up. As night fell, Yang Yulong carried me into thick bushes to hide and rest. I was amazed by his speed. It was like lightning. His feet never truly touched the ground. I wondered what levels beyond this must be like. While we rested, Yang Yulong suddenly opened his eyes with an extremely grave expression, staring to the right. I opened my eyes too, but heard nothing unusual, yet his face grew darker and darker, as if facing a terrible enemy. He told me to leave immediately. I asked where to wait for him. He said not to wait. He would find me. I nodded, stood up, and ran off with my axe. As I left, Yang Yulong stood and walked forward, his body glowing with deep purple light. He gripped his spear and said, Li Rufeng, you came fast. Li Rufeng appeared nearby in golden armor, calm and confident. He told Yang Yulong he was impressed by having such a loyal warrior, meaning me. He offered Yang Yulong a chance to surrender, promising to treat him well and saying there was no point serving a dying dynasty. Yang Yulong smiled coldly and repeated my words back at Li Rufeng. Jade can be shattered, but its whiteness cannot be changed. He refused to surrender, saying he would die loyal to his country. Then he charged at Li Rufeng, his body erupting with purple light like a dragon, thrusting his spear without another word. I ran through the night, my huge body crashing through the darkness like a wild beast. I looked back once, wondering what had happened to the general, but I couldn't see anything. I figured he must have sensed danger and told me to leave. I had done everything I could. The general told me to go, so I went. Sitting around waiting to die wasn't my style. I ran for most of the night through winding mountain roads. I was starving and lost, with no idea where I was. When I was sure nobody was following, I found a hidden cave and collapsed inside to rest. The next morning, I found a mountain spring, drank deeply, and jumped in to wash off all the dried blood. I cleaned my axe too. The blade was chipped and dented everywhere from yesterday's battles, looking like a saw. I thought about my situation. Yang Yulong's whereabouts were unknown. Xiong was missing. The whole Yang family army seemed finished. I had killed dozens of yellow turban generals, so they definitely wanted me dead. With my size, I'd be noticed anywhere. Staying in Fengzhou was too dangerous. I had to leave. I had grown another centimeter overnight, now 252 centimeters tall. After walking half a day in the blazing July heat, I found a small town built along the main road, with big trees providing shade. The people walking around looked tough, armed, muscular, with fierce faces. It reminded me of the old saying about a bandit den disguised as a rest stop. But I was starving with nowhere else to go, so I walked in. Everyone on the street stared at me in shock, whispering to each other. I ignored them and found a restaurant. I had lost all my treasures in the formation, but still had a few gems in my pocket. I sat down, slammed my axe into the floor, and demanded they bring me all the food they had. The whole place went silent, everyone staring. I smashed a table with my hand and told them to stop looking and bring the food. When the waiter brought the dishes, I grabbed his wrist and forced a chicken leg into his mouth to test for poison. He swallowed it, and almost immediately his eyes went dark, and he collapsed on the floor. I knew it. This was a bandit den, and they had drugged the food. I grabbed my axe and roared. I leaped at the shopkeeper and split him in half with one blow, destroying the counter. Everyone in the restaurant drew their weapons and attacked me. Some threw hidden weapons at me like a rain of metal. I blocked my face with my axe blade and charged into the crowd like a bull. Their hidden weapons bounced off me without doing any damage. Then I swung my axe through them all. The street was chaos. People kept rushing at me with swords, and I kept cutting them down. When it finally stopped, the restaurant was a bloody mess with bodies and severed limbs everywhere. I went to the kitchen. The cooks had all fled, leaving piles of food behind. I grabbed some survivors from the floor and forced them to eat the food first to test for more poison. I tested the wine too. Once I was sure it was safe, I started eating 2 big baskets of steamed buns and dozens of pounds of rice wine before. The hunger finally faded. I packed the remaining buns in a cloth bundle, filled a gourd with wine, then looted every coin from the front counter. I also found a small map on the counter, which I took. As I walked out, I realized I couldn't leave witnesses who might report my location to the Yellow Turban Army. I turned back. The remaining people on the street saw the killing intent in my eyes and tried to run, but I caught and killed them all. I searched their bodies for valuables, then set fire to every building before leaving. After walking dozens of miles, the wine started hitting me. I pushed through until I found a fork in the road. Using the map, I figured out which way led to Qingshi province and took the right path. After walking half a day more, suddenly drums thundered ahead. I sobered up instantly. I was surrounded on all sides by armed soldiers on war horses. Right in front of me stood a man in golden armor with a confident smile, and beside him were the 2 strange Taoist priests, one with the golden ears and one with golden eyes. "Li Vanguard, where are you going? Won't you surrender?" the man asked. I demanded to know who he was. One of his generals shouted that this was Li Rufeng, commander of the Yellow Turban forces in Fengzhou. I was shocked. This was the heavenly martial realm expert himself. I turned to run, but behind me more generals appeared, blocking my escape. Their leader was holding a prisoner, Xiong Yud, with disheveled hair and a deathly pale face. "General Xiong," I shouted. Xiong Yud yelled back, "Li Vanguard, the general is dead. Surrender." I couldn't believe it. Yang Yulong was dead. Xiong Yud explained that Yang Yulong had fought Li Rufeng alone so as not to drag us down, burned through his energy using a secret technique, and died on Changyang Mountain. So that night, when he told me to leave, he really was facing mortal danger. Li Rufeng spoke calmly. He said he had admired Yang Yulong, but that Yang refused to surrender and fought to the death. He told me to stop resisting and offered me a deputy general position, plus rulership of an entire city once Fengzhou was pacified. His generals were furious at this generous offer. Some shouted that I was untrustworthy. One charged at me on horseback, and others followed, wanting to kill me before I could take a city that should be theirs. Li Rufeng shouted for them to stop. They obeyed reluctantly. Li Rufeng asked one more time, "Will you surrender?" Xiong Yud begged me to give in. I made my face look pained and conflicted, then slammed my axe into the ground and said, "I surrender." Li Rufeng was delighted. But what he didn't know was that while I looked anguished on the outside, I was completely calm inside. I understood he valued me because of my loyalty, so the more loyal I appeared, the more he would trust me. I was cornered with no way out. I had no intention of dying here. I would get past this moment first and figure out the rest later. On the hilltop, Li Rufeng's advisor warned him that I was like a wolf, surrendered but not truly loyal. Li Rufeng dismissed it, saying if Yang Yulong could win my loyalty, so could he. His generals were furious that I had killed so many of their men and was now being offered a city. Li Rufeng calmed them down, saying Fengzhou was just the beginning. They would take surrounding provinces too. so there would be plenty of territory for everyone. He told them to learn loyalty from me. Li Ruffing asked about my mount. I told him I was too big for normal horses and my captured ones had died in battle. He offered me a war horse and said he could repair my damaged axe. I thanked him but said I had one request. I wanted Yang Yulong's body back. He had treated me well, and I couldn't bear to leave him unburied. The generals erupted in anger, but Li Ruffing sighed and called me a truly loyal man. He asked his generals which of them would dare retrieve his body if he were killed one day. They all went silent with shame. He agreed to give me the body for a proper burial. He assigned Xiong Yud to serve under me. Xiong Yud looked ashamed. He felt he should have died fighting rather than surrendering. Li Ruffing kept me close as we marched toward Fengzhou City. He kept staring at my body, amazed by my size. He asked about my cultivation level. I told him I was at the 4th level of body cultivation. He was stunned. At only the 4th level, with my blood energy suppressed, I had killed dozens of his 5th-level generals. He asked if I was born with divine strength. I said I just knew I was strong, ate a lot, and my body was still growing. That surprised him even more. He seemed to think I might be what old books called a natural Vajra, someone born with extraordinary physical gifts that only increased with age. Then he asked if I knew how to reach the demon martial realm after the 10th level of body cultivation. I didn't know. He smiled and said he would tell me later. He explained the Yellow Turban Army to me. They came from the Holy Fire sect of the Great Zhou dynasty. Below the sect leader were 2 protectors, 3 Dharma kings, and 4 directional envoys. Li Ruffling was the southern envoy. The sect had raised 4 armies totaling over 1 million soldiers. I was shocked. Li Ruffling was just one of 4 commanders, and he was already this powerful. I asked about other factions. He said the Great Zhou dynasty was crumbling and many sects had rebelled. The empire had 108 provinces, each thousands of miles across. The Holy Fire sect was strong but only first-rate, not top-tier. Some sects with 1,000-year histories were ones even they wouldn't provoke. Therefore, armies only operated in the eastern region, covering 21 provinces. Li Ruffing had taken just 1 province so far, and the other 3 armies had each taken one as well. The rest were held by the imperial court or other sects. I was deeply amazed. From the outside, the Yellow Turban Rebellion looked enormous, but against the whole empire, they were actually very small. I asked Li Ruffling about how to enter the demon martial realm. He smiled and told me not to rush. When my foundation building was complete, he would help me. I wondered what he meant by help. Maybe reaching that realm required someone else's assistance. I planned to look into it later. We traveled until we reached Fengzhou's capital city. The gates were wide open. The streets were broad with shops everywhere. Residents walked around, but looked nervous living under Yellow Turban rule. Li Ruffing didn't seem to care and led us straight to the city lord's mansion. Inside, a group of Taoist priests was waiting. They all stared at me in shock. They had heard about the giant who killed dozens of their generals inside the formation, but seeing my 252-centimeter body in person was something else. Their leader, a man in purple-red robes called Ziyang, congratulated Li Ruffling on gaining a new fierce warrior. Li Ruffling introduced him as a 10th-level contract master from the Chunyang Temple. I was impressed. Reaching that level as a contract master probably meant he was over 100 years old. Behind Ziyang, I spotted Qinya the Taoist and Fahong the monk, the same 2 I had fought on the road before. They smiled awkwardly and apologized for our earlier conflict. I responded with a dry remark about their guidance on the road. Li Ruffing laughed and told everyone to drop old grudges since we were all on the same side now. Li Ruffing brought me to the main hall and confirmed that the city lord position would come after he took Qingshi province. I accepted. Then he had a young woman named Yuer lead me to the morgue to see Yang Yulong's body. I asked her to help arrange funeral supplies. She agreed, but said I had to pay. When I reached into my bundle for silver, she snatched the whole bundle and walked off before I could object. I cursed silently, but let it go. I entered the cold room. Yang Yulong lay on a wooden bed, covered in blood, motionless. I sighed deeply. I wanted to say something, but couldn't find the right words. I paced the room for about 15 minutes before finally leaving. Outside, Xiong Yud was waiting. He explained why he had surrendered. The enemy had captured the families of Yang Yulong's soldiers and threatened to kill them all if he didn't give in. He felt deeply ashamed, being the only surviving deputy general. I told him I believed him, and he didn't need to explain. Then Xiong leaned in and whispered that since we were both loyal to the imperial court, we should secretly become spies and betray the Yellow Turban Army when the court's forces arrived. I gave him a long, hard look that made him uncomfortable. I told him I had already betrayed one master by surrendering. Did he want me to betray another and become a man who switches sides 3 times? I said I was a simple man and refused to keep changing flags. I told him not to bring it up again and walked away. The truth was, I wasn't from this dynasty. I owed no loyalty to the great Zhou court. I repaid kindness to whoever treated me well. That was all. Besides, I had bigger ambitions. Serving under someone else was only temporary. When the right opportunity came, I would build something of my own. I heard someone call my name. It was Qin Sanhai. He was tied up, covered in blood, being dragged out to be executed. I shouted for them to stop and walked over. A soldier told me Qin Sanhai had refused to surrender and was to be beheaded on Zhang Mao's orders. I looked at Qin Sanhai and told him the general was dead. He should surrender. He agreed. I told the soldiers to untie him. But then Zhang Mao showed up with 2 other deputy generals. He ignored me completely and coldly ordered the soldiers to keep going with the execution, saying it was too late for surrender. He wouldn't give me any face. I didn't bother arguing. Without a word, I swung my huge palm at his face with full force. Outside the formation now, my blood energy was no longer suppressed, and Zhang Mao's injuries from our earlier fight hadn't healed. He had no time to react. The slap twisted his face like dough, knocked out 4 or 5 teeth, and sent him spinning through the air. Before he even landed, I grabbed his foot, lifted him like a chicken, and slammed him headfirst into the ground. The stone cracked and blood splattered everywhere. At 189 centimeters, he used to be the biggest fighter under Li Rufeng, but next to me, he was nothing. The other 2 deputy generals tried to step forward. I turned and roared at them, asking who dared come closer. They froze and backed off, shouting that they would report me to the commander. I looked down at Zhang Mao on the ground and told him he was garbage in my eyes. Today was just a lesson. Next time, I wouldn't hold back even for the commander's sake. Then I tossed him aside like trash. I told Qin Sanhai to follow me to see the commander. He was thrilled, quickly got his chains off, and came with me. Meanwhile, what I didn't know was that Li Rufeng had been having those 2 strange Taoist priests, the one with golden ears and the one with golden eyes, spy on me the whole time. They could see and hear from dozens of miles away. They had reported everything to Li Rufeng, including my conversation with Xiong Yud, where I refused to become a spy for the court and said I wouldn't switch sides again. When Li Rufeng heard that, his last bit of doubt about me completely vanished. He smiled and called me a truly loyal man worth his weight in gold. Then the golden-eyed priest told him I had just beaten Zhang Mao. Not a fight, but a one-sided beating. Li Rufeng was furious at first, but when he remembered I was now loyal to him, he couldn't stay angry. He sat there with a dark expression, silently waiting for me to arrive. I walked into the main hall. My 900-pound body filled the doorway like a small mountain. Before Li Rufeng could ask, I admitted I had hit Zhang Mao and asked to be punished. He asked why. I explained the situation with Qin Sanhai and asked him to spare the man's life, promising Qin Sanhai would be loyal. Li Rufeng said it was a small matter and I should have just talked to him instead of fighting. He let it go but told me to buy Zhang Mao a gift as an apology. I said I had no money. He asked about the bundle of silver I had been carrying. I told him I spent it all on Yang Yulong's funeral. Li Rufeng checked with the golden-eyed priest, who confirmed it was true. Li Rufeng was speechless. He said even he couldn't have been that generous to a dead former boss. He agreed to handle the apology gift himself and told me not to cause more trouble. I then reminded him about fixing my damaged weapon. He said someone would take care of it. As I left, I noticed the 2 strange priests beside him, golden eyes and giant ears. They seemed like the legendary clairvoyant and clairaudient. I wondered if they were also contract masters. Qin Sanhai followed me out. Someone arranged living quarters for us in the mansion. My weapon was taken for repair. Xiong Yud, Qin Sanhai, and I settled in. The other 2 felt uncomfortable in the Yellow Turban camp, but I didn't care. I just ate and trained every day. For days past, my Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist finally reached the proficient level, going from beginner to 130 out of 640 experience needed for the next stage. I had focused entirely on this technique. My height was now 256 centimeters, weight 980 gene. I was getting more terrifying by the day. I used my panel to switch my growth to a specific body part instead of overall height. I was pleased with the result and headed to the kitchen. 7 more days passed. I kept training the Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist while also researching the body cultivation and inner energy systems. At night, I practiced the Red Flame Heart technique. In the library, I found detailed records about body cultivation. Each level doubles the previous level's strength. 4th level is 2,000 gene, and by the 10th level it reaches 130,000 gene, enough to break open city walls and split mountains. To go beyond the 10th level into the demon martial realm, you need to fuse with a monster beast spirit essence, merging with it to transform your body beyond human limits. The beast's abilities become yours. But only beasts listed on the Mountain Sea rankings qualify, and stronger beasts create stronger transformations. That's why Li Ruffing said he would help me. Getting such a spirit essence alone would be nearly impossible. I thought about it. The demon martial realm basically meant turning yourself into a monster. But then again, my endlessly growing body was already monstrous, so who was I to complain? I also read about the heavenly martial realm for inner energy users. After reaching the 10th level, inner energy condenses and transforms, creating a giant divine shadow around the user with godlike power to split mountains. That seemed like the proper path, but my Red Flame Heart technique still hadn't even reached the beginner level. I wondered if I had no talent for it. I looked for information about contract masters, but found almost nothing. The books barely mentioned them. I wondered what happened when a contract master reached the 10th level. It was midday and brutally hot. A bunch of deputy generals were bathing naked in a pond to cool off. I stripped off my shirt, showing my monstrous muscles, and walked toward the pond. Xiong warned me that those men didn't like me, but I didn't care. When they saw me approaching, their faces went cold at first. Then they noticed a certain part of my body, and their expressions changed to total shock. One after another they stared in disbelief, then started getting out of the water and leaving as fast as they could. Even Zhang Mao looked at himself, looked at me, and immediately left, cursing under his breath. The whole pond emptied out. Chen Sanhai swallowed hard and called me a god among men. I waved him off and got in the water. The cool spring felt incredible. I sank to the bottom and started practicing the Red Flame Heart technique. For the first time ever, I actually felt a trace of energy, faint warmth moving through my body. I opened my eyes excitedly and checked my panel. The Red Flame Heart technique had finally appeared. Beginner level, 1 out of 180. Now I just needed to keep building experience, and the panel would track my progress. Then someone called out that my weapon was ready. I jumped out, got dressed, and hurried over. In the courtyard stood my repaired axe. It was terrifying. The handle was as thick as a person's ankle, carved with mysterious patterns and wrapped in thick beast hide. The blade had been completely restored with some kind of expensive black material. The whole thing felt like a steel beast. I grabbed it and started swinging, using my overturning heaven and sea axe technique. The air exploded in waves, sand and rocks flew everywhere, and everyone in the courtyard backed away in fear. Li Ruffeng was watching from a tower. He was impressed. Beside him, the Taoist master Zhang reported that Su Sheng, the general of Qingshi province, had fled in terror after hearing Yang Yulong was dead and Fengzhou was taken. Qingshi province was now empty. Li Ruffeng smiled coldly. He had expected as much. Zhang reminded Li Ruffeng about promises he had made to the various sections. Li Ruffeng assured him he would keep his word. Then Li Ruffeng ordered the war drums to be struck. The booming sound spread across the entire mansion. Every deputy general's face changed. They grabbed their armor and weapons and rushed to assemble. Xiong Yud told me this was the summoning drum, meaning Li Ruffeng was planning something big. I picked up my axe and headed to the main hall with Xiong Yud and Chen Sanhai. Inside, all the generals had gathered in full armor, weapons in hand, faces stern and ready to kill. When the summoning drum sounded, something major was always about to happen. Li Ruffeng noticed me in the crowd and asked how I liked my repaired weapon. I said it felt good and heavier. He smiled and told me he had the blade reforged with black patterned steel, an incredibly rare material worth 10 times more than gold. Even a tiny amount could greatly improve a weapon. Everyone in the room stared at my axe with envy. I thanked him. He said if Yang Yulong could give me weapons and manuals, he certainly wouldn't be stingy either. Then he got down to business. He announced that Su Sheng, the general of Qingshi province, had fled without a fight, leaving it empty. He ordered the army to march immediately and seize it. His advisor, a scholar named Wu, warned it could be a trap to lure them away from Fengzhou. Li Rufeng said Ziyang had personally confirmed it. Still, he left Wu with some troops to guard Fengzhou. Orders went out fast. The whole army moved like a black tide toward Qingshi province. Li Rufeng gave me a new war horse to save my energy. We marched for 3 days straight, barely resting even at night. By mid-August, we entered Qingshi province. The heat was fading. Zhang Mao rode ahead and reported no resistance at all. The province really was empty. He said the capital was less than 100 miles away. Li Rufeng smiled and ordered everyone to push harder, aiming to reach the city by dusk. But just as we entered a mountain valley, everything changed in an instant. The sky went black, thick dark clouds rolled in, and a chilling death-like energy filled the air. It became so dark you could barely see your own hand. The whole army panicked. Soldiers screamed. Horses reared and bucked. It was like the end of the world. Li Rufeng's eyes turned cold. He recognized it was a formation. Someone was ambushing us. Ziyang identified it immediately as the 9-in White Bone Formation belonging to the Yellow Springs sect. It wasn't Su Sheng. Ziyang pulled out a bronze mirror, bit his tongue, and spat blood onto it while chanting. The mirror absorbed the blood and erupted with blinding light like a small sun, shooting a beam that swept through the dark clouds, dissolving them. But they kept reforming. He called for all the contract masters to help. Over a dozen of them channeled their energy into his back, strengthening the mirror's power. The light beam swept across a hilltop and burned away the clouds there, revealing a massive army in green robes and armor. Their leader had a waxy yellow face, green robes, and held a huge halberd. His voice shook the surrounding mountains as he laughed and called out to Li Rufeng. Xiong Yud whispered to me. This was the Green Forest Army, another rebel faction, led by Yuan Jingyi, who was also at the Heavenly Martial Realm. They were backed by the great Zhou's Xianin sect. They had arrived in Qingshi province first and set up this ambush. Xiong Yud secretly felt hopeful. If these two forces destroyed each other, the imperial court could sweep in and clean up, and he could redeem himself. I asked Xiong Yud if the enemy leader was also at the Heavenly Martial Realm and who was stronger. He said he didn't know. They'd have to fight to find out. Li Rufeng rode forward and confronted Yuan Jingyi, demanding to know why the Green Forest Army was blocking his path. Yuan Jingyi laughed and said the empire belonged to everyone, not just the Holy Fire sect. He said he would use a formation to trap Li Rufeng the same way Li Rufeng had trapped Yang Yulong. Two more powerful figures appeared beside Yuan Jingyi, a white-haired Taoist named Yi Xian from the Yellow Springs sect, and a tall bronze-skinned swordsman called Blade King Chen Fong, who was also at the Heavenly Martial Realm. His eyes were so sharp the air hissed when he looked around. They demanded Li Rufeng surrender. Li Rufeng wasn't worried. He glanced at Ziyang, who nodded. He had found the formation's weak point. Ziyang blasted his bronze mirror's light at a specific spot on a hillside. There was a scream, a black banner snapped, and all the dark clouds rapidly dissolved. The sky cleared. Li Rufeng ordered everyone to attack. He charged at Yuan Jingyi and Chen Fong on his horse. Ziyang rushed at the enemy contract master Yi Xian. Yuan Jingyi and Chen Fong attacked Li Rufeng together, two heavenly martial experts against one. When their weapons clashed, the shockwave was like bombs exploding. Soldiers within dozens of meters were instantly turned to bloody mist by the aftershocks. Then both armies crashed into each other. This battle was completely different from the one against Yang Yulong. Both sides had their full power. The fighting was brutal, with all kinds of energy attacks lighting up the battlefield. I swung my axe like a demon god, cutting down over 10 men quickly. My horse was getting in the way, so I jumped off and charged on foot like a human tank. The newly reforged axe was incredible. It cut through armor like nothing, smooth and unstoppable. I just kept charging and chopping, blood flying everywhere. Nearby, I heard Zhang Mao shouting for help. He and 5 other generals were struggling to fight a big man in green armor wielding a copper staff. Even 6 against 1, they were losing. Then another yellow-turbaned general I recognized charged in on horseback with a black crocodile-shaped blade and split the copper staff in half with one strike. sending the enemy flying. The man fled into the crowd. Zhang Mao chased after him. I had seen that blade-wielding general before. He was always close to Li Rufeng and rarely showed himself. His strength seemed close to the 8th level. He looked at me coldly and barked at me to stop standing around and keep killing. I said nothing and charged back into the fight. He gave me a cold look. Clearly, he wanted to kill me himself, but held back because Li Rufeng valued me. While the two armies were locked in fierce combat, the battlefield suddenly changed. Yuan Jingyi jumped back, pressed his palms together, and his body erupted with blinding white light. A massive white figure, 7 or 8 meters tall, formed behind him and wrapped around his body. Blade King Chen Fong did the same. White light burst from him too, forming another giant figure surrounded by swirling blade energy. Both charged at Li Rufeng with devastating power. Soldiers near them were shattered into bloody mist just from the shock waves. The ground rippled like waves. Everyone screamed that this was the heavenly martial body and started retreating. I pulled back too. The pressure was suffocating even for me. But Li Rufeng wasn't worried. He smiled coldly and said they could die now. He pressed his own palms together, and light exploded from his body, but his wasn't white. It was a terrifying blood-red color. Yuan Jingyi and Chen Fong froze in horror. They screamed, "Heavenly Martial Third Transformation?" Impossible. I learned that the Heavenly Martial Realm had 9 transformations, each with a different color. White was the first, green the second, red the third. Each transformation was vastly more powerful than the last. Their intelligence said Li Rufeng was only at the first transformation like them, but he was actually at the third. Yuan Jingyi tried to flee, but it was too late. Li Rufeng's blood-red figure moved with impossible speed. One punch engulfed Yuan Jingyi in crimson light. He exploded. Chen Fong screamed that he would surrender. Li Rufeng said it was too late and punched him apart too. He didn't trust a heavenly martial expert as a subordinate. Only killing them was safe. The Green Forest Army collapsed instantly. Everyone fled. Our Yellow Turban forces chased them down mercilessly. Xiong Yud was stunned that Li Rufeng was a third transformation expert. I was equally shocked by the terrifying power I had just witnessed. The slaughter continued from noon until dusk. Finally, before sunset, Li Rufeng led us to Qingshi Province's capital. The gates were wide open. Most residents had already fled. Only some merchants and poor people remained. Li Rufeng sat on his horse, his face pale but smiling. He told the generals to split up and seize the other cities as planned. They cheered and rode off in different directions. Then he told me to stay with him as his guard while he entered the city. He said using the heavenly martial body was extremely draining and he needed at least half a day to recover. I agreed and followed him in. Qingshi Province's capital was huge, even bigger than Fengzhou's, according to Xiong Yud. The whole province had 8 cities compared to Fengzhou's 6, with thousands more square miles of mountains and forests. I stayed in the city lord's mansion for 2 days, guarding Li Rufeng while he recovered and continuing to train my tiger demon bone-forging fist. In my room, I looked in the mirror and was stunned by how absurdly large a certain body part had grown. I told the panel to switch back to vertical growth. I also tried asking if I could grow just hair, but the panel told me it only worked on flesh and bone, no hair of any kind. Annoying. 5 more days passed. The generals who had gone to seize the other cities started sending back treasures, medicines, pills, rare herbs, monster beast blood, boxes and boxes filling the main hall. The previous governor Su Sheng had fled too quickly to take everything. Li Rufeng shared some of the spoils with Xiang, giving him faith crystals. I learned that contract masters had 2 ways to cultivate, slowly through pills and herbs, or quickly through absorbing people's faith energy condensed into crystals. Every faction in the world suppressed contract masters to prevent them from growing too strong. Working with Li Rufeng was the only way they could freely absorb faith. Li Rufeng also found a 3rd-grade body-strengthening pill among the treasures. Xiang suggested Li Rufeng use it himself since he practiced both body and energy cultivation. Li Rufeng declined, saying it would be wasted on him and would work best on me. He said he wouldn't be outdone by Yang Yulong in rewarding loyal followers. Then a messenger pigeon arrived with urgent news from the Holy Fire sect. Li Rufeng read the note and exploded with rage. He told Yuer that the sect's acting leader Yang Su had accused one of the 4 elders, Tong Yunxing, Li Rufing's close friend who had saved his life multiple times, of betraying the sect. They had killed Tong Yunxing's entire family and were now hunting him and his 2 children. Tong Yunxing had sent his son and daughter fleeing while he drew the pursuers away alone. Li Rufing said he would personally go rescue Tong Yunxing, but someone needed to save the 2 children. All his generals were already deployed across the province. He decided to send for me. I was the only one available he could trust. He didn't trust the contract masters, knowing they were only cooperating to absorb faith and might turn on him once they had enough. In the main hall, Li Rufing handed me a golden bottle and told me it contained body-strengthening pills, a third-grade medicine for body cultivators made from extremely expensive ingredients. He said with my talent, it would push me up another level. Then he told me about his mission. His close friend Tong Yunxing was in danger, and Tong's son and daughter were fleeing and being hunted. They had likely escaped to the Blackstone City area, thousands of miles away in Hangzhou province. He couldn't send his army there, so he needed me to go alone. I could reach it in 1 day by war horse. He told me to find a pharmacy called Qiuwu in the south part of the city to get information and their portraits. He gave me a token to identify myself. He warned me to be careful and not to get myself killed if things went bad. Back in my room, I opened the bottle. Exactly 10 pills, each the size of a longan fruit. I popped one in my mouth immediately. It exploded inside me like a raging fire, sending my blood energy boiling. I quickly focused on controlling it and began cultivating. By noon, I had broken through, from the 4th level to the 5th level of body cultivation, reaching the blood energy like clothing stage. But the breakthrough made my body explode in size again. I went from 258 centimeters to 276 centimeters, gaining 18 centimeters. My weight hit 1,220 gene. I cursed out loud. I had only used 6 of the 10 pills. This confirmed that every future breakthrough would make me grow bigger, since blood energy increases started at the 4th level. I wanted to throw the remaining pills away but stopped myself. Refusing to advance just because I'd grow taller would be foolish. Besides, my Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist was now at 810 out of 900, almost at the mastery level where I could reshape my bones and shrink my body. The pills had also boosted all my other techniques. I saved the remaining 4 pills since they weren't enough for another breakthrough anyway. Xiong Yud and Qin Sanhai came to my door and stared in shock at my new size. I told them I was fine and asked them to bring me a war horse. I had to leave immediately. Li Rufing had already departed early that morning on his own mission. I touched my head, relieved I wasn't going bald. That would have really ruined my look. Meanwhile, near Blackstone City, 3 people were hiding in a secret shelter. Tong Yunxing's daughter Tong Kaier and young son Tong Zhan were with Li Rufing's own daughter, Li Fengyan, who had helped them escape. Fengyan was dressed in men's clothing and told them not to worry. Her father probably already knew what was happening and had likely sent someone to help. She suggested they hide there for a night and wait for the pursuers to pass before continuing toward Qingshi province. Tong Kaier mentioned that Blackstone City seemed unusually full of suspicious martial artists. Fengyan noticed it too, but said it probably had nothing to do with them. Meanwhile, in Blackstone City, a group from a faction called the Iron Shin sect was meeting in a dark room. They had learned that Tong Yunxing's son and daughter had fled to the city, and more importantly, that Li Rufing's own daughter was with them. They saw this as a huge opportunity. Capturing Li Rufing's daughter would give them leverage over him, since they had military supplies stuck in his territory. Their headquarters had ordered them to secretly capture her. They also mentioned that the city was chaotic because of rumors that someone had stolen a divine-level martial arts manual from the imperial court and fled here, attracting all sorts of factions and martial artists. But their leader told them to focus on their own mission. I arrived near Blackstone City, but didn't enter right away. I found a cave outside the city and focused on pushing my Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist to the mastery level first. When it reached mastery, my bones started moving on their own, fusing together, reshaping. My ribs filled in all the gaps between them, becoming one solid bone plate. My forearm bones fused together, my shin bones merged, my spine and limbs all transformed. It was like my entire skeleton was being reforged. The pain was terrible, like being torn apart. I groaned like a giant bear, sweating buckets. By dusk it was finally over. I checked my panel eagerly, hoping I could shrink down to normal size. My height had gone from what should have been 278 centimeters down to 270. My weight jumped to 1,380 gene. But that wasn't real bone shrinking. It was just compression from the bone fusion. I tried to control my bones and shrink further, but I couldn't. 270 centimeters was my limit. I couldn't get back to a normal 189 centimeters. The bone shrinking in the technique just meant compressing bone density, not freely reshaping my size. I sighed and touched my ribs, completely solid, no gaps between them at all. Just one continuous armor-like bone plate. My skin had become incredibly tough too. This was what they called plate ribs and iron sinews. Despite the disappointment, my body was stronger than ever. One palm strike sent shockwaves through the air like a tornado. My cultivation had jumped from early 5th level to peak 5th level, just one step from breakthrough. The remaining 4 body-strengthening pills should push me through. My bare body technique and overturning Heaven Axe technique had both nearly reached their maximum levels too. My Red Flame Heart technique had ticked up slightly to 2 out of 180. I told myself to stop worrying about my height and get into the city. If those 2 kids died, I'd have no way to explain it to Lee Ruffin. I stepped out of the cave, my massive body radiating heat. Night fell over Blackstone City. In a rundown shelter, Li Fengyan was confronted by 6 people called the Yin-Yang 6 envoys, 3 dressed in black, 3 in white, their energies opposing like yin and yang. They accused her of contacting criminals and threatened that even her father could face consequences. She cursed at them and charged with her sword. Tong Kaier and Tong Zhan joined the fight. A fierce battle broke out in the courtyard. At the city gate, I approached and a terrified soldier tried to search me. He barely reached my waist. Before things got awkward, his officer ran over, face white with fear, and waved me through immediately. After I left, I heard the officer cursing at the soldier for trying to search someone like me. Inside the city, the dark streets were full of martial artists lurking in the shadows. They all stared at my massive body in shock as I walked past. I noticed the city was restless. Something was going on beyond just Tong Yunxing's children. I sensed people following me. I stopped at an alley and told them they had 10 seconds to leave or I would start killing. Some scattered, but one man stayed hidden on a rooftop. I picked up a head-sized rock and hurled it at him. It moved so fast it nearly caught fire in the air. It smashed both his legs, snapping the bones. He fell screaming. Everyone else fled immediately. I found the Chou pharmacy and knocked on the door. The door frame was only about 260 centimeters, too short for my 270-centimeter body. A middle-aged man opened the door, saw me looming over him like a mountain of flesh, and nearly fainted. He tried to slam the door shut, but I stuck my hand in and pushed it open, sending him flying. He begged for mercy, thinking I was a robber. I showed him Li Rufing's token. He recognized it instantly and became respectful. I told him to skip the pleasantries and tell me where the targets were. He said that half an hour ago, the 3 of them had been hiding in an abandoned house in the south part of the city, but the Yin-Yang 6 envoys from the Holy Fire sect had found them and a battle had broken out. His people couldn't get close enough to know the current situation. I asked who exactly I was rescuing and where their portraits were. Li Ruffing hadn't had time to give me details. The man was surprised, then told me. Besides Tong Yunxing's son Tong Zhan and daughter Tong Kaier, there was also Li Rufing's own daughter, Li Fengyan. Li Rufing's daughter, I hadn't expected that. The contact gave me 3 portrait scrolls and directions to the old house. I asked why the city was so full of martial artists. He explained that a martial master had escaped from the imperial court carrying a divine-level technique and supposedly fled here, drawing crowds of treasure hunters. I headed to the abandoned house, but arrived too late. The place was wrecked, broken walls, smashed rocks, fresh blood on the ground. They had just been fighting here. 3 black-clothed figures suddenly rushed into the courtyard. We stopped and stared at each other. They asked who I was. I asked if they were after Li Fengyan and the Tong siblings. When they confirmed it, I charged at them like a war machine, swung my axe, and killed all 3 instantly. I grabbed a terrified beggar from the street who told me 1 man and 2 women had been chased by 6 people toward the east just moments ago. I dropped him and sprinted that way. Meanwhile, Li Fengyan was fighting the Yin-Yang 6 envoys with Tong Kaier and Tong Zhan. They were exhausted and badly hurt. Fengyan told the siblings to run while she held off the 6. They wouldn't dare kill her since she hadn't committed any crime. When they refused, she threatened to kill herself if they didn't go. They finally fled. The siblings ran through alleys until they hit a dead end. A tall, muscular figure was blocking their path. It was Lu Feng, called the Eight-Armed Iron Ape, a peak 6th-level fighter from the Iron Qian sect. He wanted to capture them and use them to find Li Fengyan. He lunged at them with iron-black claws that shredded the air. Just as Tong Kaier drew her sword to fight, I smashed through the wall beside them. I came crashing in like a flood beast, swinging my axe at full power. Lu Feng's eyes went wide. He poured all his energy into his arms, which swelled and turned iron-black with metal rings, unleashing a barrage of black palm strikes to try to stop me. It wasn't enough. Our attacks collided with a deafening explosion. The stone ground shattered and flew everywhere. Lu Feng went flying backward, spraying blood, smashing through the wall behind him. I barely swayed, exhaled once, and my muscles settled back to normal. I looked at the two terrified siblings. Tong Kaiyo, Tong Zhan, my voice boomed like a bell. They were shaking with fear, staring at me like I was a monster. Tong Zhan gritted his teeth, pulled out a dagger, and charged at me, yelling for his sister to run. I roared with my tiger aura at full force. The sound shook the entire alley. Both siblings stumbled and nearly collapsed from the shockwave. I carried my axe and ran through the streets with the Tong siblings following behind, still in shock from watching me kill Lu Feng with one blow. Through talking with them, I learned the Iron Qian sect was also involved. They wanted to capture Li Fengyan to use as leverage against Li Rufeng. This was getting complicated. I heard fighting ahead and sped up. In a narrow alley, I found Li Fengyan, badly wounded, coughing blood, slumped against a wall with her sword dropped. The 6 Yinyang envoys were closing in. Their leader said she was a traitor for helping criminals, and they would take her back to be judged. One of the black-robed elders lunged at her, but I came smashing out of the alley like a charging beast, my body so big it shattered the alley entrance. I looked at the wounded woman and called her name. Tong Kaier shouted to Li Fengyan that I was sent by her father. The 6 envoys attacked me all at once. The lead elder charged with his Xian Yin tearing technique. Li Fengyan warned me their energy was strange. But I erupted with my blood energy, crimson light blazing around my body, and my power surged several times over. I swung my axe at the elder with my tiger aura at full blast. His energy shattered like bubbles. My axe split him clean in half from head to toe. The other 5 were horrified. A peak 6th-level fighter killed in one blow. But they couldn't retreat since they had orders. They all attacked at once. I cut through them without stopping. Within moments, all 5 were dead under my axe. I turned to Li Fengyan and asked if she could walk. She stammered yes. I told everyone we needed to find a place to rest tonight and leave the city tomorrow. The situation here was too dangerous. Holy Fire Sect, Iron Qian Sect, and who knew what else. I wanted out fast. Tong Kaier helped Li Fengyan walk. Her leg was badly wounded with bone showing through. They limped along behind me. Tong Zhan nervously called me Senior and asked my name. I told him not to call me Senior. I might not even be older than him. He asked my age. I said 15. All 3 of them froze in disbelief. He asked my name. I said Li Dao. He started to call me Senior Li again. I told him to stop calling me Senior. As we moved through the streets, martial artists who had been drawn by the fighting noise spotted us. When they saw my body, many turned and fled immediately. They hadn't forgotten how I had shattered that man's legs with a thrown rock earlier. We heard fighting nearby, but I decided not to get involved. I led the 3 of them away. Li Fengyan suggested we go back to the same abandoned house. The Holy Fire Sect people wouldn't expect us to return there. She was worried about other factions coming after us too, especially the Iron Qian Sect wanting to use her against her father. I told her I hoped tonight would be peaceful. I was already at peak 5th level, and once I took the remaining 4 body-strengthening pills, I might break through to the 6th level. Meanwhile, the Iron Qian Sect found Lu Feng's body and learned that the Yinyang 6 envoys were also dead. An elder described me to the others, nearly 10 feet tall, copper skin, iron bones, wielding a giant axe. They couldn't believe it, but insisted Li Fengyan had to be captured per headquarters orders. Back at the abandoned house, I was about to push open a door when Tong Kaier screamed not to touch it. They had left poison on it before leaving. But I had already touched it. Then something incredible happened. A warning appeared on my panel. Host is experiencing contamination. Body growth paused for 1 day. I was thrilled. My curse could be paused. The poison had polluted my body and stopped the growth for a day. I immediately rubbed my hands all over the poisoned door, hoping to add more days. But it didn't work, no change. Only the first contact counted. I asked Tong Kaier for more poison. She gave me a blue jar of blood-withering powder, extremely deadly, able to drain anyone's blood dry, dangerous even for 8th level experts. I asked if she had an antidote. She did, so I took that too. Then, while they watched in horror, I scooped the powder with my finger and ate it. Nothing changed on the panel. I ate more. Still nothing. I ended up dumping the entire jar into my mouth. The panel stayed at 1 day, no increase. The three of them were terrified, staring at me like I was a monster eating deadly poison like food. I crushed the empty jar in frustration. It seemed each type of poison only worked once. The hope of controlling my curse had appeared and shattered in moments. The disappointment was crushing. I apologized for scaring them and asked Tong Kaier if she had any other types of poison. She nervously handed me 2 more small bottles. I thanked her, told everyone to rest, and said we would leave at dawn. Then I went into the room alone. In the dark room, I couldn't figure out why the first poison contact paused my curse, but eating more of the same type didn't add extra days. I was afraid to test the 2 remaining poison bottles and have my hopes crushed again. Instead, I swallowed the last 4 body-strengthening pills and began cultivating. Red light filled the room. In the other room, Li Fengyan told the siblings that if I wanted to hurt them, they'd already be dead. They decided to rest. But then footsteps sounded in the courtyard. An old man's voice said he had guessed we'd return to the same place. Li Fengyan recognized him. Wu Xian, an outer elder of the Iron Shin sect, peak 7th level. He had 3 other 7th level fighters with him. They spotted the strange energy coming from my room, and 3 of them rushed in to attack me first. Bad timing for them. I had just broken through to the 6th level. A massive hand shot out of the darkness and grabbed one elder's head like a small apple. I burst through the doorframe. Both sides shattered against my body, and appeared in the courtyard holding the elder's skull in one hand and my axe in the other. I told them disturbing someone's cultivation was punishable by death. Then I crushed the elder's head in my grip. Blood and bone fragments sprayed everywhere. The others charged at me in fury. I hit them with my tiger aura. My eyes erupted with killing intent that made their energy waver and their hearts tremble. Even Wu Xian felt it and shouted for retreat, leaping backward. But his companions weren't fast enough. I had just reached the 6th level, and with my fused bones and curse-transformed body, even 8th level fighters would struggle against me now. I swept my axe through them like cutting vegetables. Body split apart, limbs and blood flew in every direction. Then I charged after Wu Xian, unleashing my overturning heaven axe technique, blow after blow, deafening, suffocating. He dodged frantically, screaming. Finally my axe caught him. Half his body flew into a wall, trailing intestines. I slammed my axe into the ground and told everyone we needed to move immediately. This place was no longer safe. I also noticed something important. My body hadn't grown from the breakthrough. I was still 270 centimeters. The curse pause from the poison contamination apparently blocked all growth for the entire day, including growth from breakthroughs. That was a valuable discovery. While I was dealing with the Iron Shin sect at our hideout, things were happening elsewhere that I didn't know about at the time. In a stormy mountain forest, Li Rufeng had found his friend Tong Yunsheng, but it was too late. Tong Yunsheng was broken and bloody, with a severed arm, insisting he never betrayed the sect. A fat man and a thin man in blue, envoys of the acting sect leader Yang Su, accused him of secretly meeting with the Xianin sect. Despite Tong Yunsheng's desperate pleas of innocence, they beat him to death right in front of Li Rufeng, who was held back by 7 or 8 elders. Li Rufeng screamed so loud the mountains shook and trees shattered. When the fat envoy asked if he also wanted to be labeled a traitor, Li Rufeng laughed bitterly and mocked their leader with cold sarcasm before walking away. The fat man threatened that Li Fengyan's involvement with Tong's children would be used to charge Li Rufeng next. Among the elders present, one was secretly a spy for the imperial court. He immediately sent a pigeon message revealing that Li Rufeng's daughter was hiding in Blackstone City. That message reached Yuan Province, the territory of the famous Ding Dongwang Yang. Tiandao, a heavenly martial realm general with 13 elite warriors all above the 7th level, one of the top 5 military commanders in the eastern 21 provinces. The former Qingshi province General Su Sheng was already there, trembling with shame for surrendering his province without a fight. Yang Tiandao read the intelligence about Li Fengyin being in Blackstone City, which was in Fengzhou, territory Li Ruffin controlled. His eyes narrowed. He called it good news. His generals immediately understood the significance. Capturing Li Rufing's daughter could be the key to reclaiming 2 entire provinces without a major battle. While I was in Blackstone City, events were unfolding far away that I knew nothing about. In Yuan Province, General Yang Tiandao, a heavenly martial realm commander known as the Zhenglong, one of the top 5 military leaders in the eastern provinces, was planning a massive operation. He sent his 13 elite warriors on separate missions, 2 to recruit the generals of Hangzhou and Jizhou for a joint attack, 3 to invite 3 heavenly martial realm masters from different temples, and 3 to mobilize all soldiers and martial sects in Yuan Province. He gave the disgraced Su Sheng a chance to redeem himself by contributing his remaining forces. His plan was to use Li Fengyin as bait, surround Blackstone City without attacking, and lure Li Ruffing out. He would set up a grand formation along the way to trap and kill Li Ruffin. He knew Li Ruffin was too emotional to abandon his only daughter. He also planned to eliminate all the martial artists and secret weapon forges inside Blackstone City as a threat to the Empire. His advisor offered a formation called the 5 Elements 5 Decays formation that would cause everyone inside to wither, sicken, and lose all their strength. The Iron Xian sect also learned about Yang Tiandao's plan and saw their own opportunity. While Li Rufeng fought Yang Tiandao, they could seize his 2 undefended provinces. Back in Blackstone City, I woke to chaos. The city gates had been sealed. Soldiers lined the walls with bows, crossbows, and massive siege crossbows that could threaten even 7th or 8th level fighters. Martial artists who protested were quickly silenced by the show of force. In my room, I tried the last 2 poison bottles, licked them completely clean. Nothing. No extra days added to my curse pause. All 3 types of poison had 0 effect after the first one. Yet none of the poisons harmed me either. I could eat deadly toxins like food without any ill effects. I cursed in frustration, wondering how many hidden functions this panel had that I still didn't understand. I came out of my room with bloodshot eyes. Li Fengyin told me all 4 city gates were sealed shut and nobody was allowed to leave. Martial artists were rioting in the streets, and some had started robbing and killing. I told them we couldn't stay. I grabbed my axe and headed out, with the 3 of them following. The streets were packed with angry people. I roared for everyone to move and swatted 7 or 8 people out of my path. When the crowd turned to look at me in fury, they saw my 270-centimeter body and went silent with fear. People parted as I walked through. Someone hiding in the crowd started mocking me with a strange voice technique, calling me a useless giant and making disgusting comments about the women behind me. Tongjian cursed back. I stopped. The voice kept taunting. I suddenly charged through the crowd toward a tea stand where an old man sat. He had been using some kind of sonic attack. I roared with my tiger aura, making him see a vision of a monstrous black tiger. Before he could react, I punched him in the chest. His entire torso caved in, organs turned to mush, blood poured from every opening. He died instantly. People whispered he was a famous killer called the Cold Hand Demon Lord. The crowd cleared a wide path for us. We reached the city gate. The walls were packed with soldiers, countless bows drawn, and over 10 massive siege crossbows aimed inward, weapons powerful enough to threaten 7th or 8th level fighters. I asked Li Fengyin if she could still use her movement techniques despite her injuries. She said yes. I planned to throw something to smash the gate open, draw fire to myself, and let them escape in the chaos. But before we could act, a thunderous roar came from outside the walls, thousands of horses charging. The entire city went silent. On the horizon, an endless ocean of soldiers appeared, banners flying, splitting into 5 groups that rapidly encircled the entire city. In less than 20 minutes, they had the city completely surrounded, layer upon layer. The moment the encirclement closed, a strange oppressive energy spread inward from all directions. Even 8th level experts shivered. The city's garrison commander Wang Feng recognized it. a human formation, powered by sheer numbers, one of the three types of grand formations. He was confused why the Fengzhou governor's own army was surrounding them. Below the walls, the Fengzhou governor Long Yujiang sat on his horse, expressionless. A Taoist beside him pointed out there were over 100,000 people in the city, including 2,000 soldiers. Long Yujiang sighed and said sacrifices were necessary to protect the empire. While I was trapped inside Blackstone City, massive events were unfolding across the region that I knew nothing about. Armies from 4 provinces, Yuan, Qingshi, Jizhou, and Hangzhou, were converging like a black tide toward Blackstone City. Tens of thousands of soldiers, along with martial sects and noble families, all marched together under Yang Tiandao's orders. They moved fast, trying not to give Li Rufeng any time to react. But Li Rufeng's Holy Fire sect had spies across all 21 eastern provinces. The news reached him about half a day later, just after he returned to Qingshi province. He immediately understood. Yang Tiandao was using his daughter, Tong Yunqing's children, and me as bait to lure him into a trap. Yang Tiandao had even brought several heavenly martial realm experts. It was a perfect scheme with no good options. If Li Rufeng went, he walked into a trap. If he didn't, his daughter, the Tong siblings, and I would all die. But Li Rufeng wasn't the type to run. He knew retreating meant Yang Tiandao would chase him down anyway. Fighting gave him at least a chance. He ordered all forces from both Fengzhou and Qingshi province to gather at Wolf Valley, on the road to Blackstone City. He asked Ziyang for advice on countering enemy formations. Ziyang suggested having soldiers drink enchanted water and forming human formations to counter any ambush. Li Rufeng committed everything, every last soldier from both provinces, leaving nothing behind to guard his territory. If he lost, guards wouldn't matter anyway. It was all or nothing. Meanwhile, the Iron Shin sect was watching gleefully from the shadows. With Li Rufeng's forces heading toward Yang Tiandao's trap, and his 2 provinces left completely empty, they planned to swoop in and seize both Fengzhou and Qingshi province the moment the 2 sides clashed. Their elder laughed that Li Rufeng's emotional nature was his fatal flaw. The strange oppressive energy from outside hit, like invisible waves from 5 directions. Everyone in the city started feeling sick, like having a high fever, unable to breathe properly, energy draining away. People collapsed everywhere, vomiting and groaning. Even the martial artists could barely stand. Li Fengyin and the Tong siblings turned white and nearly fell over. They could feel their internal energy disappearing and their bodies deteriorating. Tong Kaier recognized it as a grand formation. I felt it too, but only a slight dizziness, nothing like what everyone else was experiencing. The streets looked like a disaster. Ordinary residents dropped like flies. Some martial artists tried to rush the gates, but the moment they opened them, a storm of arrows cut them down. I grabbed the 3 of them and headed for the city walls to see what was happening. The wall soldiers were mostly collapsed on the ground. The garrison commander Wang Feng was still screaming toward the outside, begging the governor to explain why his own people were being trapped. A martial artist kicked him aside and looked out. The sight was terrifying. An endless army surrounded the entire city, 3 layers deep, banners everywhere. To the east, the Hangzhou governor Long Yujiang sat on his black horse in golden armor, a 10th-level expert, with over 100 generals around him. To the south was another force led by Zhu Yutian, an 8th-level fighter from Su Shang's old command. I scanned all 4 directions, high-level fighters everywhere, plus countless martial artists conscripted from across the provinces. I wondered if this was all for Li Fengyin and the Tong siblings, but it made no sense to mobilize 4 provinces for that. The oppressive energy kept getting worse. Stronger people were affected more. Everyone on the walls was terrified, feeling their bodies shutting down. Tong Kaier finally identified it, the 5 elements 5 decays formation. It caused everyone inside to wither, sicken, and lose all strength. The stronger you were, the worse the effects. A nearby Taoist confirmed it, trembling with fear, saying it was basically a death sentence for the whole city. I asked how to break it. Tong Kaier said it could only be countered by an equally large human formation attacking from outside. Impossible since we had no army. Li Fengyin tried to stay positive, saying her father's intelligence network was the best, and he probably already knew what was happening. But Tong Kaier pointed out that only one of the 4 provincial armies was visible here. Where were the other 3 governors, especially Yang Tiandao? They were probably hiding along the route, waiting to ambush Li Rufeng when he came to rescue us. This whole siege was bait. I realized she was right. The situation had just gotten much worse. Then a middle-aged Taoist on the wall called out to everyone, saying he might be able to brew enchanted water that could temporarily suppress the formation's effects. The weakening martial artists all turned to him desperately. Everyone gathered in the city lord's mansion while the Taoist worked on his enchanted water. People kept getting weaker, skin shriveling, losing dozens of pounds in minutes. Tong Zhan asked how I was still standing. I told him the formation affected me too, just not much. With my 1,380 gene body, even if it drained some of my flesh, it was basically just losing a little weight. As time dragged on, people started losing their minds. Several martial artists screamed that the Taoist was tricking them and charged toward him with weapons drawn. I smashed through them instantly, killing the ones who attacked. The rest were shocked into silence. But then more people started arguing, including 7th and 8th level fighters, saying I had no right to boss them around. I slammed my axe into the ground and asked if they wanted to play. They rushed me. It was like an adult beating children. I swatted every single one of them aside, including the 8th level experts. Within moments, the entire square went quiet. I stepped on one 8th level fighter's face and told everyone that from now on, I was in charge. Nobody argued. Hours passed. Nearly everyone in the city had collapsed. The place looked like a city of the dead. I started worrying the Taoist had died in there. Finally, at dusk, the old Taoist burst out excitedly. He had made the enchanted water, but it would only last 1 hour before the formation's effects returned. 1 hour was better than nothing. I helped pour it down everyone's throats. They started recovering, still thin, but their energy returned. Some of the fighters I had beaten earlier glared at me, but one look from me shut them down. I stood before the crowd and announced that the Yellow Turban Army was heading this way, and if we could break out of the city, we could meet them. I told everyone staying here meant certain death. Some protested that charging the formation was suicide. I asked them if staying was any better. The Taoist asked about my plan. I said there was no fancy plan. We charge out the west gate where the enemy has fewer experts, and run before long Yu Jiang can respond from the east side. The enchanted water was ticking down every second we waited. I raised my axe and roared, "Who will fight to the death with me?" Silence. Nobody answered. I roared again, "Whether we fight or not, we die. If we must die, shouldn't we die trying?" The cold in my voice and eyes hit them like ice water. Finally, they answered together, "We accept your command." On the dark streets, I walked with my axe in one hand and the bandaged 8-armed iron ape Lu Feng in the other. He was guiding me somewhere. My height was back to 275 centimeters now. Lu Feng pointed me toward a small courtyard where I could hear fighting. I peered over the courtyard wall. It was so short I didn't even need to stand on my toes. Inside, 3 men were fighting fiercely. 2 of them, one tall and thin, one short and fat, were attacking a man named Yang Hai, trying to convince him to join some scheme involving 7 experts from a criminal ranking. Yang Hai refused and fought back hard. His hands glowed red with some kind of toxic power that kept pushing the other 2 back. I watched with a grin, thinking tonight's haul was looking good. The short fat one happened to glance toward the wall and saw my enormous head peering over it, smiling at him. He nearly lost his mind with terror and screamed for his partner to run. The tall thin one didn't understand why and kept fighting. The fat one bolted. That's when I made my move. I smashed through the courtyard wall, sending chunks of mud flying everywhere. I charged in laughing, swinging my axe at the 2 criminals. They barely managed to raise their weapons to block. One hit from my axe bent their weapons and sent them flying from their shattered hands. Both men sprayed blood and crashed into the far wall with broken arms, and I was holding back. If I had gone full force, they would have been dead. Then I spun and charged at Yang Hai. I didn't use my axe on him, though. I was afraid I might accidentally kill him with it. Yang Hai was shocked by my sudden appearance, but reacted fast, being a peak 7th level fighter. He leaped backward, refusing to clash with me head-on. He could tell from how I had just destroyed both his opponents in one blow that I was far beyond his level. I chased Yang Hai around the courtyard, but couldn't grab him. He was too fast. I roared with my tiger aura, and a massive black tiger shadow appeared behind me. Yang Hai froze for a split second, his energy slowing. I lunged and slammed my palm down on him, driving half his body into the ground. He coughed blood and asked what kind of monster I was. I pulled him out and tossed him next to the two brothers. They were all terrified. The fat one cried and begged, offering money, asking if I was from the authorities. I told them I wasn't the law, but I controlled the law in Blackstone City. I declared all three of them recruited. They were now my personal soldiers. Xiangyud came in and forced black pills into their mouths. Lu Feng hobbled over, wrapped in bandages, and gleefully explained that they had just swallowed my special poison pills. Without a monthly antidote, they would rot alive. He was clearly happy others were sharing his misery. I asked the two brothers to explain themselves. Lu Feng identified them as the Gao brothers, Gao Bo the short fat one, and Gao Lon the tall thin one, both notorious criminals from the blacklist. Under pressure, they told me everything. There was a martial arts trade gathering happening in 5 days at Henyun Manor, near the border between Hangzhou and Blackstone City. Independent martial artists would meet to exchange resources. A group of 8 blacklist criminals had planned to ambush and rob the gathering. The Gao brothers had come to recruit Yang Hai as their 8th member, but he refused, which started the fight. The other 5 criminals were still hiding elsewhere. Most were 7th level or above. The 2 strongest, Su Tianbiao and Gelong, were mid-8th level. Gelong had already infiltrated the gathering as a spy and planned to poison everyone first. Mid-8th level was troublesome. Even with my fused bones, I wasn't sure I could beat that. But I didn't want to pass up this opportunity. The gathering was in 5 days. My Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist was close to breaking through, and if it did, I might reach the 6th level and grow strong enough to handle 8th level fighters. I asked what kind of experts the gathering's legitimate martial artists had. The Gao brothers told me about the 3 most famous fighters who would attend the gathering. First was Ancient Moon Yang, an early 8th level swordsman who had been famous in Hangzhou for 20 years. Second was a strange monk called the Wine-Fighting Monk who carried a massive iron vat full of wine everywhere. Third was an old beggar called the Iron Palm Divine Beggar, nearly 80 years old, also 8th level, known for standing up for the weak. Below them were a few 7th level fighters, and mostly 3rd and 4th level ones. I got all the details I needed, then searched Yang Hai's house thoroughly before leaving. Xiangyud took the 3 new recruits back. Lu Feng mocked them, saying they should feel honored to serve me. They cursed him silently for leading me to them. That night, I went into seclusion to train. The Gao brothers' information presented a real opportunity. If I played it right, I could build the foundation of my own team. But I needed to reach the 6th level first. For 3 days I trained hard, punching shirtless in the courtyard. My Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist was devastating. One pure physical punch sent a boulder weighing thousands of pounds flying into the air and shattering. I had been growing my right arm specifically, and it was now noticeably bigger than my left. The bone 3 centimeters thicker in diameter, the fingers larger, the whole arm gleaming like metal when I flexed. It looked uneven though, so I told the panel to switch growth to my left arm. After 3 days, my Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist reached 1,320 out of 1,400. Just 80 experience points from breaking through again. Then Xiangyud came to tell me the Chunyang Temple Taoists had arrived. These were the contract masters Li Rufeng had promised positions in the city. I remembered Li Rufeng was wary of them. Once they absorbed enough faith energy, they could grow dangerously powerful. I went to the main hall. 2 old Taoists in dark green robes sat nervously with 4 young disciples, all very weak, 2nd and 3rd level. The 2 elders were 7th level. They had heard stories about me, fighting through the 8-gate Golden Lock formation, killing dozens of generals, and weren't sure what to expect. They had also noticed my blacklist recruits in the courtyard and worried I might be planning to kill them. I walked in, my massive shadow filling the doorway, radiating a fierce aura. I greeted them warmly, saying I had been looking forward to their arrival. The 2 old Taoists jumped to their feet, staring at me in stunned silence. The 2 old Taoists were clearly shaken by my size up close, but they composed themselves quickly. They introduced themselves as Xianyuan and Xianfeng, bowing respectfully with their 4 young disciples. They were much more humble than I expected, wearing patched, dirty robes, looking old and plain. I had imagined they would be arrogant and defiant. forcing me to deal with them harshly. But they were so polite, I didn't know what to do with them. I sat in my custom iron chair and handed them a paper with their appointed positions, priest and 4 junior priests. No real power, just observing the sky and praying for peace. If they could manage to absorb faith on their own, fine. Li Ruffling had promised them positions, and now they had them. Xianyuan thanked me gratefully. Then he glanced around, stepped closer, and quietly pulled out a bottle of pills from his sleeve, a gift from their sect leader. Body-strengthening pills, 10 of them, same as last time. He said their leader believed the pills would work best in my hands. This was perfect timing. I no longer had to worry about breaking through. But their generosity made it harder to justify getting rid of them. I wondered if I could recruit them instead. I asked if they had more pills. They said the ingredients were too expensive. I then asked to see their contract master abilities, weather control, flying swords. They refused frantically, saying they wouldn't dare show off in front of me. I mentioned I had nearly been killed by contract masters before, so I knew they were powerful. They still refused. I thought about bringing them to the martial arts gathering in 5 days. 2 7th-level fighters would help. But they were new and might not be trustworthy. If they talked about what happened, it could draw unwanted attention. I stared at them for a long moment, making them visibly nervous, then left without saying anything more. Chen Sanhai showed them to their quarters. In my room, I dumped out the 10 pills. I swallowed one immediately. My blood energy erupted and roared inside me. Meanwhile, the 2 Taoists huddled with their disciples in their room, deeply unsettled. They said my killing aura was unlike anything they had ever felt, more like facing a beast from the Mountain Sea rankings than a human. They regretted coming. Xianfeng told everyone to keep their escape talismans ready in case things went bad. They had no chance against me and the blacklist fighters in my service. The next morning, I checked my panel after breaking through overnight. I had reached the 6th level of body cultivation, but my height had jumped to 289 centimeters and my weight to 1,500 gene. I used 7 of the 10 pills. All my techniques had improved significantly. My red flame heart technique had shot up to 92 out of 180. A new skill had appeared too, poison arts at the proficient level. My arms were still uneven, so I planned to grow the left one for 2 more days. I hoped that when my tiger demon bone forging fist reached its maximum level, it might reshape my body again and shave off some height. At lunch, I asked Xiong about the Taoists. He said they had gone outside the city to make rain for the farmers, just waving their hands and rain poured down, making people kneel and worship. Then they went into the city giving out free enchanted water that cured diseases instantly. I realized they were collecting faith energy. No wonder every faction feared contract masters. At this rate, the whole city would worship them within a month and forget I existed. I told Xiong to keep watching them, but I had to deal with the martial arts gathering first. 2 days later, I headed to Hengyun Mountain. At the base, martial artists were gathering at tea stands, discussing the event. Some were laughing about rumors of a giant man nearly 10 feet tall with bronze skin, saying it was obviously made-up nonsense from storytellers. They also mentioned that a famous monk called Master Juan from the Great Chan Temple had been invited this year, an 8th-level expert. That was unusual since major sects normally ignored these gatherings. I walked up to the tea stand. One martial artist turned to see who was asking about Jin and found himself completely engulfed in my shadow. He stared up at my bucket-sized head and froze. Everyone in the tea stand went silent, mouths hanging open. So much for those ridiculous storyteller tales. I smiled as friendly as I could and asked him to tell me more about Master Juan. The more I tried to look harmless, the more terrifying my face apparently became. The man stammered that Juan was an 8th-level monk from the Great Chan Temple. I nodded and said I wanted to attend the gathering too. I asked him to lead the way. I headed up the winding mountain path toward Hengyun Manor with Lu Feng, Yang Hai, and the Gao brothers following behind me. The martial artists walking ahead kept nervously looking back at us. I admired the mountain scenery and joked that I'd love to retire here if the world weren't so chaotic. One of the martial artists I had pressured into guiding me said we were almost there. At the manor gate, a steward named Wu was welcoming guests. A stick of incense was burning down. Once it finished, the gates would close. He walked around a corner to check for latecomers and ran straight into a group of terrified martial artists scrambling ahead of me. When he saw my massive body carrying my giant axe, his face went pale. I grinned and said I was happy to find the place. He demanded to know who I was and whether I had been invited. The Gao brothers said I just needed someone to vouch for me. I laughed and pointed at the fleeing martial artists, saying they could all vouch for me. They turned white and scrambled into the manor without a word. Someone shouted that I had blacklist criminals with me. The steward panicked and ran toward the gates, screaming to close them and alert the manor lord. I swatted him with one blow. He flew through the air, smashing through 3 or 4 trees, spraying blood. I marched toward the iron gates, annoyed that I had come all this way to recruit these people, and they were shutting me out. The guards frantically tried to close the massive iron doors. I charged straight at them with my full 1,500 gene body like a human meteor. The impact sounded like thunder. The mountain walls shook. The guards were flung away, spraying blood. The iron gates burst open. I laughed and ducked through the doorway. It was only about 234 centimeters tall, so I had to bend way down to fit my 289-centimeter body through. My 4 men followed with grins on their faces. Behind the gate was a stone screen wall with passages on either side leading to a large courtyard. I walked through carrying my axe. The commotion had already alarmed everyone inside. Famous martial artists rushed out of their rooms, asking what was happening. Several brave fighters ran to investigate, but they came running back almost immediately with a dozen others, faces white, scrambling and screaming. There's a monster. A huge monster. To make the biggest impression, I jumped from the corridor and landed in the middle of the courtyard. With my body weighing over 2,000 gene, including my gear, the impact shook the entire ground, cracking the stone floor and sending debris flying. It was like a mountain dropping from the sky. Everyone's legs wobbled, and they stared at me in stunned silence. I grinned and said there were plenty of people here. This trip was worth it. A white-browed old monk in orange robes was the first to speak, asking who I was and what I wanted. Then the manor lord, an old man in a wheelchair named Su-Yi, known as Old Master Su-Hu, shakes all directions, demanded to know why I had broken in and where his steward Wu was. Some people started recovering their courage, remembering they had powerful experts here. But when they looked at me, many couldn't hold my gaze. My eyes made them feel like prey being watched by a beast. I announced that I was Li Dao, city lord of Blackstone City, and that their gathering was being held without my approval, which meant they were breaking the law. An old man in a straw hat and raincoat, the famous Taihu fishing elder, laughed and said a city lord had no authority over independent martial artists. The Iron Palm Divine Beggar clapped and agreed, saying Blackstone City was just one small city and couldn't govern people from 3 provinces. The manor lord demanded I explain what happened to his steward. I said I had hung him on a tree and he could go find him himself. He was furious, shaking with rage, demanding I answer for attacking his man. Others joined in shouting. I roared so loud it sounded like thunder. Many people clutched their ears in pain, feeling their eardrums nearly burst. Even the famous elders flinched. I dropped the pretense. I told them I had come specifically to recruit them all. I said they looked like homeless wanderers eating scraps, and I was generously offering them official positions serving under me. The Taihu fishing elder laughed and said this was absurd. They weren't bandits who needed recruiting, and only an emperor could issue such orders, not some city lord. The wine-fighting monk, holding his giant iron wine vat with one red-flushed face, chuckled that he was used to being poor and didn't want to be an official. Lu Feng suggested I stop wasting words and just force-feed them all the poison pills. The Gao brothers agreed. I narrowed my eyes and asked coldly, "What if I insist on recruiting you?" Their faces darkened. Every one of them glared at me with cold eyes. They could tell I was serious about forcing this, and they were starting to notice the blacklist criminals standing behind me. Nobody wanted to join me willingly. Fine. I stomped the ground so hard it exploded and charged straight into the crowd like a rampaging beast. I didn't even use my axe, just my body. The air burst apart as I plowed through. Martial artists flew in every direction, spraying blood, screaming. They couldn't withstand a single hit. I swung my massive palm at the 4 big names: Iron Palm Divine Beggar, Wine-Fighting Monk, Taihu Fishing Elder, and Master Juan. They all leaped away in time, but the people standing near them weren't so lucky. They went flying like leaves. I spun and charged again, mowing down martial artists like cutting wheat. The 4 experts attacked me together with full power, their energy blazing. We clashed with deafening explosions. The crowd panicked and stampeded in every direction. The hidden blacklist criminals were confused too. Their poisoning plan was ruined by my sudden rampage. Meanwhile, the Manor Lord He kept shouting from his wheelchair for everyone to stand and fight together, but nobody listened. They were all running. He realized his honored reputation meant nothing when real danger came. Then one of the hidden blacklist criminals, Su Tianbiao, an 8th-level fighter, crept behind the old Manor Lord and crushed his skull, killing him instantly. The other hidden criminals started looting the manor. I noticed everyone was escaping and roared at my 4 men to stop letting people get away. I couldn't afford to let them all flee. There'd be nobody left to recruit. I had to end this fast. I unleashed my tiger aura at full power. A terrifying black tiger shadow appeared behind me, roaring. Master Jian recognized it immediately. My tiger demon bone-forging fist from his own Great Chan temple, pushed to near its peak. While everyone was stunned by the tiger aura, I struck. I smashed the Taihu fishing elder's arms, then my fingers raked across his face. His head burst like a watermelon. Headless body flew away. The wine-fighting monk swung his massive iron wine vat at my back. I spun and slapped it so hard the vat slammed back into him, breaking his bones and sending him flying, spraying blood. I grabbed his iron vat, swung it around, and smashed it into the iron palm divine beggar. He tried to block with his famous 9 iron palms technique, but the impact shattered both his arms and launched him into the crowd. 3 powerful enemies down in 3 moves. I laughed with wild joy. Then I charged at Master Jiuan. He fought back furiously with golden fist strikes, and I met him blow for blow without dodging, just trading punches head-on like 2 beasts colliding. Finally, he coughed blood and staggered back. Before he could retreat, I flashed forward and locked my arms around his body like iron chains. "Old monk, you're skilled," I said, breathing hot air in his face. "Why won't you just let me recruit you?" The whole courtyard was chaos. My 4 men were doing their best to stop people from fleeing, but there were too many, including several 7th-level fighters they couldn't handle quickly. I finally let go of the old monk. He was completely limp, golden pale face, blood pouring from his mouth and nose, arms and bones all broken. I had only squeezed him once with full force, but it seemed like I had crushed every bone in his body. I shoved a poison pill into his mouth and pushed it deep with my finger. Then I did the same to the iron palm divine beggar and the wine-fighting monk. With those 3 handled, I looked around and saw my men struggling against several 7th-level fighters. I charged over and started knocking people out, punching, slapping, clean and fast. Anyone below 7th level went down in 1 hit. Even the 7th-level fighters lasted 3 moves at most before collapsing. Then I noticed several figures darting through the manor with big bags on their backs, trying to slip into the crowd and escape. It was the hidden blacklist criminals. They had been robbing the manor while I fought. Su Tianbiao was carrying 4 or 5 heavy bags, moving incredibly fast toward the wall. I grabbed my axe and hurled it at him. He spun and slapped it away with his black sand palm, but the impact made his hand go numb and forced him back several steps. Before he recovered, I leaped up, caught my axe midair, and swung it down at him. He dodged. The ground cracked like an earthquake. I threw a punch at him without any pause. He met it with both palms and all his 8th-level energy. His arm nearly broke on impact. He said it was like punching a mountain. He tried to run. I was faster. I grabbed the back of his neck and lifted him up like a chicken. Then over a dozen hidden weapons hit my back. The other blacklist criminals had attacked together. The projectiles bounced off my Qixin armor with sparks. I dodged the ones aimed at my head. 4 blacklist fighters charged at me simultaneously. I tried to squeeze Su Tianbiao unconscious, but his energy defense was too strong, like a turtle shell. I slapped him across the face, knocking blood out of him, then threw his body at 2 of the attackers. He crashed into them, sending all 3 spraying blood. The last 2 saw me grab my axe and immediately turned to flee. They had originally planned to rescue Su Tianbiao and fight me together, but seeing him defeated changed their minds completely. They cursed themselves for not teaming up with Juyuan and the others earlier. But I was already charging with my axe, laughing, air shattering around me like a demon unleashed. I swept the axe in a massive horizontal arc, sweeping 1,000 armies. The fighting finally stopped. The courtyard was silent, blood everywhere, dozens of bodies on the ground, some dead, some unconscious. The famous experts, Master Jin, Iron Palm Divine Beggar, and Wine-Fighting Monk, were all knocked out. The Taihu Fishing Elder was dead. I stood among them holding my axe and told everyone I had said from the start I just wanted to recruit them. Nobody dared argue back. I had the Gao brothers identify the fallen blacklist criminals, Su Tianbiao, Galong, Zhao Tianli, Zhang Peng, and Wu Nan. All accounted for, none escaped. I ordered my men to force-feed them all poison pills. Gulong screamed at the Gao brothers for betraying their alliance. Gaolon laughed and shoved the pill down his throat, saying he was on the right side of the law now. My men fed pills to everyone who was unconscious too, including the 3 famous experts who were pretending to still be out cold. Then I looked at the remaining martial artists and told them anyone below the 5th level could leave. Nobody moved. They were afraid it was a trick and I'd kill them as they walked away. I got annoyed and roared at them. Hundreds of weaker fighters scrambled away in terror. About 20 people remained, all 5th level or above. I had my men hand each of them a poison pill. They stared at the egg-sized black balls in horror, but swallowed them down, some needing water to get them past their throats. I told them not to worry. They were just becoming my personal guard. They would receive food, shelter, and cultivation resources. Those who performed well would get even better rewards. I knew poison pills alone wouldn't keep people loyal long-term. I needed to offer real benefits. When they heard about free cultivation resources, some of them perked up. One 5th-level body cultivator asked nervously if I could really provide rare medicines for his training. I told him sharply not to question whether I kept my promises. People started whispering to each other. Even the injured ones on the ground were exchanging glances. My offer was clearly tempting them. I told the ones still playing dead on the ground to stop pretending. I knew they were awake. Juan, Iron Palm Divine Beggar, Wine-Fighting Monk, and the blacklist criminals all reluctantly got up. I shouldered my axe and marched toward the exit. My men shouted for everyone to follow and keep up. The whole group trailed behind me with bitter smiles. Down the mountain, the earlier escapees were still running for their lives, while latecomers arriving for the gathering stood there confused, having no idea what had just happened. At the mountain base, martial artists were still gathered, refusing to believe the stories about what happened. They thought it was impossible that someone could defeat Juan, Iron Palm Divine Beggar, and the others. Then they saw us coming down, dozens of people with pale faces, led by me. When they recognized the famous experts walking behind me like defeated men, their eyes went wide. I picked up a boulder and hurled it at a massive stone slab, shattering it to pieces. Everyone scattered. The Gao brothers asked if they should chase and kill the onlookers. I said no, they were just nobodies. We entered Blackstone City through a side gate to avoid attention. On the way, I spotted something that bothered me. The Taoist Xinyuan had built a ritual altar on the street, covered in paper talismans. He sat on top, looking holy, sprinkling water on long lines of worshipping citizens. In just a few days, he already had this many followers. I muttered that this was like a cult. If I let it continue, it would become a serious problem. I glanced at the 5 new blacklist fighters beside me and got an idea. Back at the mansion, Xiong Yud and Chun Sanhai met us. Xiong Yud was stunned when he recognized who I had brought. Master Juan, Iron Palm Divine Beggar, Wine-Fighting Monk, and notorious blacklist killers. I left them all under his command and noticed his shock that I trusted him enough to manage people far stronger than himself. I called the 5 blacklist criminals, Su Tianbiao, Galong, Zhao Tianli, Zhang Peng, and Wu Nan, into a back room. I sat in my iron chair and stared at them until they squirmed. Then I asked what they knew about fighting contract masters, specifically how to deal with ones who could escape underground. They all had experience killing contract masters, but only through surprise attacks, sneaking up and striking from behind. They said contract masters spent their lives on mountains and were naive about real danger. One good ambush and they were done. I told them I didn't want to kill these particular Taoists. They were useful, and killing them would bring trouble from their sect. Su Tianbiao suggested using poison instead. He said poison was the most reliable weapon in the world. Used correctly, it could even bring down heavenly martial and demon martial realm experts, let alone contract masters. They had already prepared poisons for the gathering before I showed up. They knew plenty of toxins that could incapacitate contract masters. I asked what specific poisons would work on contract masters. Su Tianbiao grinned. and said he knew 2 or 3 types. Late that night, the 2 Taoists were still out treating people. They took turns, one healing, one resting, working through the night with their disciples helping. I told Xiong to notify me whenever they returned, then went back to training. By the next morning, even more citizens were flooding to the ritual altar, lining up in long queues. The 2 old Taoists were clearly pleased. Their cultivation, stuck for 7 or 8 years, was finally loosening up from all the faith energy they were absorbing. At this rate, they could break through within a month. They seemed to have plans of their own once that happened. I stayed in my room training for 2 days straight. My arms were finally even again after growing the left one to match. I switched growth to my neck bones to thicken them. My Tiger Demon Bone Forging Fist had reached 310 out of 2,400 toward its final level. But all the body strengthening pills were used up. Then I heard arguing outside. Xiong told me my new recruits were about to fight over cultivation resources. The mansion's supplies were extremely limited, not even enough for me alone, let alone dozens of fighters. I had never worried about resources before because Yang Yulong and Li Ruffing always provided everything. Now I was on my own. Xiong said he had secretly saved enough for 2 more days of my medicine baths. That was it. I stormed outside and roared so loud the water jars in the courtyard exploded. Everyone froze. Dark mist swirled around me as I glared at them. I snatched the herb they were fighting over, a purple star grass, extremely valuable for 7th level and above fighters. I confiscated it and told them resources would be distributed on the 1st of each month, like government pay, to prevent future fights. Whoever caused trouble again, I would swallow them alive. Then I called the blacklist criminals, Su Tianbiao, Galong, Zhao Tianli, and the Gao brothers, into a private room. I sat down and told them I couldn't discuss this in front of the righteous martial artists outside. I asked them directly, with all their years of criminal experience, did they know any places rich in cultivation resources? Their eyes lit up. They understood exactly what I was asking. I wanted to find somewhere to raid. I asked the blacklist criminals about places with rich cultivation resources. Su Tianbiao said besides the imperial court and major sects, there wasn't much. Local city governments had little worth taking, and provincial governors were too powerful to rob. No merchant guilds or ancient ruins nearby either. I told them to go scout around for anything. Even a bandit hideout would do. They left, clearly realizing I wasn't as wealthy as they had assumed. I went back to training and waited for the Taoists to return. Near dusk, the 2 old Taoists and their 4 disciples finally came back, exhausted after days of non-stop healing. As they walked through the mansion, they noticed all the new faces, powerful fighters everywhere, including 8th level experts. They whispered nervously to each other, recognizing some of them. I was waiting for them. I laughed loudly and greeted them warmly, saying I felt bad about how hard they'd been working. I wrapped my huge arms around both old Taoists like they were school children and half-carried them into the dining hall despite their protests. I poured wine. They said they didn't drink. I ordered tea instead. Chen Sanhai brought a pot and poured 6 cups. The Taoists hesitated, clearly suspicious about what I was planning. I asked if they were worried about poison. They quickly denied it and took a sip. I pushed food on them too. They reluctantly ate a few bites. Their 4 young disciples did the same under my watchful gaze. Then I dropped the act. I asked them casually how much stronger they had gotten from absorbing faith these past few days, and when they planned to make their move against me. They jumped up in panic, denying everything. I told them calmly that the tea, the food, and even the chairs they sat on had all been laced with a poison called soul-dissolving powder. They grabbed their escape talismans to flee underground. But I was already on my feet. I seized both old Taoists by their heads with my enormous hands, lifting them off the ground. They struggled and made muffled sounds, but couldn't break free. The poison was already working. Their spiritual energy was draining fast. The 4 young disciples tried desperately to activate their own escape talismans, but their low cultivation meant the poison hit them even harder. They collapsed on the ground before the talismans could work. My hidden fighters rushed in from every direction, surrounding everyone. Galong asked if I wanted them all killed. I said no. I had promised not to harm them. I credited Galong for providing the poison and recorded it as a major merit. Then I ordered everyone to leave. I wanted to talk to the 2 Taoists alone. I threw the 2 old Taoists onto the floor and sat back down in my iron chair. I told them plainly that I had orders from above to take their heads, and asked if they had any last words. They turned white with terror. The 4 young disciples nearly burst into tears. They begged for their lives, reminding me about the body-strengthening pills they had given me. I said that was exactly why I was giving them a chance to speak instead of killing them outright. I explained that their faith absorption had crossed a line. The commander wanted them eliminated. I told them I would blame their deaths on the blacklist criminals to keep things clean. They pleaded desperately. Shin Senhai spoke up, asking me to spare them since they had been helping people. I pretended to think it over, then said there might be one way. If they truly submitted to me and slowed down their faith absorption, I could report to the commander and maybe get them pardoned. But they could never tell their sect about any of this. They said they were already serving me. I shook my head and placed 6 enormous black poison pills on the table. I told them this was real submission. Everyone in my courtyard, including 8th-level experts and Master Juan, had already swallowed these same pills. In exchange, I would let them absorb faith freely, as long as they followed my orders first. They hesitated, but when I reminded them the alternative was death right now, they agreed. Both old Taoists and all 4 disciples chewed and swallowed the bitter pills. I laughed so loud the roof shook and ordered fresh food brought out. Shin Sanhai wiped down all the chairs too. The Taoists realized with shock that I had poisoned every seat, not just theirs. They silently acknowledged I was no simpleton. 7 peaceful days passed. I used that time to strengthen my skull, neck bones, and leg bones. My body didn't grow taller, but became noticeably wider, like a human gait. Eventually, I switched back to vertical growth to avoid getting too broad. My Tiger Demon Bone-Forging Fist progress had slowed without medicine baths. Resources were stretched thin with so many fighters to support. I missed the days when Yang Yulong and Li Rufeng provided everything, but I knew I had to become self-sufficient. During training one day, I punched and a terrifying black tiger materialized behind me. Vivid, enormous, radiating killing intent like a real demonic beast. It charged forward with my fist. Rocks exploded, wind howled. Jin, Iron Palm Divine Beggar, and the others watching all flinched in shock. This was the Tiger Demon Bone-Forging Fist condensing its true meaning into my strikes. Combined with my nearly 3-meter body, it felt truly unstoppable, as if this technique was made specifically for someone like me. I checked my panel. All 3 main techniques had reached the unprecedented level, just half a step from their maximum. My Red Flame Heart technique was almost ready to advance too. My height was 289 centimeters, weight 1,640 Jin. Outside, Jiyuan and the others were shocked by what they had just witnessed. Jan said I had pushed his temple's Tiger Demon Bone-Forging Fist to a level only their founding ancestor had ever reached. The Iron Palm Divine Beggar whispered, asking if I might have monster beast blood. Jiyuan firmly denied it, calling me a natural-born divine being. Then Xiong Yud reported that Su Tianbiao and the others had returned from scouting. I brought them to my room. Su Tianbiao said he had found a huge opportunity, but an extremely dangerous one. He asked if I had the guts for it. He explained that the great Zhou Emperor's 80th birthday was approaching, and provinces everywhere were preparing birthday tribute caravans. The birthday stele, loaded with countless treasures and rare medicines. Even a small portion would supply us for years. The target was Yuan Province's tribute. Yuan Province bordered Hangzhou and was thousands of miles from Blackstone City. The governor Yang Tiandao was currently busy fighting the Xianin sect's rebellion. His escort included his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th godson warriors, all 8th level, plus 3 or 4 7th-level fighters and 1 7th-level contract master. The rest were ordinary soldiers. I quickly counted my own forces: Juan, Iron Palm Divine Beggar, Wine Fighting Monk, Su Tianbiao, and Golong, 5 8th-level fighters, plus myself, comparable to 8th level, plus the 2 Taoist elders Xianyuan and Xianfeng. We clearly outmatched them. The caravan would depart in 3 days through Fulong Ridge, a mountain pass they had to use. Su Tianbiao said we needed to leave immediately to set up an ambush there. I agreed, but warned them not to betray me. They swore they wouldn't. I called everyone in. Over 30 fighters assembled in the hall, all formidable. I told the 4 young Taoist disciples to stay behind since they were too weak. I left Xiong Yud in charge of the mansion and told him to avoid trouble until I returned. I grabbed my axe and headed out. Only the blacklist criminals knew what we were doing. Everyone else followed blindly. I led everyone through Yuan province. Mountains everywhere, hills rolling, terrain complicated. We rushed non-stop, not even resting at night. Yuan province was far more chaotic than we expected. We had barely entered the region when we ran into 2 or 3 groups of bandits. The appearance of an 8th-level contract master terrified both Xianyuan and Xianfeng. Contract masters were completely different from the other 2 cultivation systems. They advanced the slowest, but once they did reach higher levels, their power became terrifyingly strong. The gap between each level was enormous, and their strength wasn't just about personal fighting ability. The mountain valley was a scene of carnage, bodies scattered everywhere, blood soaking the ground. Over a dozen wagons loaded with boxes sat there. Everyone was thrilled, laughing wildly as they rushed to untie the ropes and throw open the lids. Inside was a dazzling collection of treasures, glittering, magnificent, priceless. Every single person's eyes turned red with excitement, whether they were blacklist criminals or not. While I was away, things were happening elsewhere that I didn't know about at the time. In a massive military camp, General Yang Tiandao stood with furrowed brows, studying a huge map. The eastern region had 21 provinces total, and a full third of them had already fallen to rebel forces. Qingshi province and Fengzhou, not far from his own Yuan province, had long been taken by the Yellow Turban Army. I checked my panel. My height had reached 295 centimeters, weight 1,680 gene. I was 15 years old. My red flame heart technique had finally advanced to the proficient level at 22 out of 360. My bare body technique had reached its ultimate level, unlocking the frenzy secret meaning. My overturning heaven axe technique was at 620 out of 900 toward its final level. My tiger demon bone forging fist was still progressing as well. The night was pitch black and tense. Every house in the town had its doors shut and lights off. Only rows of soldiers stood guard. Not a single civilian was visible. Even a bird trying to fly through would be shot down by arrows. At the town entrance, a general named Wang Tianlei patrolled in full armor, carrying a beast-head cleaver, his fierce eyes scanning the surroundings constantly. One day later, we made it back to the city lord's mansion in Blackstone City. As soon as we arrived, Xiong Yud and Qin Sanhai rushed out to greet us. Xiong Yud said he was relieved we were finally back. He had been worried since we had been gone for over 10 days. But before he could finish speaking, his face changed to deep shock as he looked at me. I thought it over carefully and decided to send a portion of the loot to Li Rufeng. The robbery of the birthday tribute couldn't stay secret for long. With my height being so distinctive, Yang Tiandao would eventually figure out who did it. Once he did, he would come after me with everything he had. My own people alone couldn't withstand that kind of assault. I would need Li Rufeng's protection. And if Li Rufeng asked where the treasure came from, I needed to have already shown loyalty by sharing it with him. Li Rufeng sent a message back for me. He said I shouldn't be afraid. If Yang Tiandao brought his army to attack, he would personally handle it. He called me his trusted confidant and said I should never let anyone look down on me. But then he added sternly that I should stop going out and causing trouble. He was clearly shaken by what I had done, robbing Yang Tiandao's birthday tribute. He worried about what I might do next. An old man suddenly appeared. He was short, only about 173 centimeters, wearing a black robe, with an aged face and a full beard. Even standing in front of me, he wasn't as tall as I was sitting down. What unsettled me was that he showed no fear at all looking at my terrifying body. Instead, his eyes held a look of appreciation, like he was examining some fine piece of craftsmanship. That gaze made me very uncomfortable. I stood outside the city at a broken tea stand, my body radiating hot crimson blood energy like a towering mountain. I looked down coldly at a half-dead old man on the ground. He was covered in blood, his body twitching, coughing up blood constantly. His eyes were filled with deep shock and confusion, as if he couldn't believe what had happened to him. While I was back in Blackstone City, things were boiling over in Yuan province. In Yang Tiandao's military camp, Wang Tianba was kneeling on the ground, shaking with terror, face white, not daring to look up. The other warriors around him were furious, glaring at him with murderous rage. They looked like they wanted to skin him alive. Someone had robbed 12 wagons of their birthday tribute. While I was in Blackstone City, the entire southeastern region erupted into action. Armies from 3 provinces, Yuan, Langzhou, and Jizhou, poured out like black tides from 3 different directions, all converging on Hangzhou, which bordered Qingshi province. Hoofbeats thundered, dust clouds rolled, and countless banners stretched as far as the eye could see. Langzhou, Hangzhou, and Jizhou were all cooperating fully, with their best troops led personally by their provincial governors, rushing toward the assembly point. A major battle was coming, but Blackstone City was completely unaware. Life continued as normal, gates open, people going about their business. A garrison stationed 60 miles outside the city sat quietly as usual. It wasn't that they were slow to react. Yang Tiandao's plan was too thorough. Any spies who might have warned us had already been captured before they could send word. While Xin Yuan was still explaining, the eerie oppressive energy was already rolling in like invisible waves from 5 directions outside the city. You couldn't see it, but everyone could feel it clearly, like a blanket of ominous gray fog settling over the entire city. Everyone on the walls shivered. Even powerful fighters like Su Tianbiao, Galong, and Master Zhu Yuan could feel it. Everyone in the mansion was working frantically. Piles of dirt were being hauled out and dumped in the courtyard. After a full day, we had managed to dig a long tunnel beneath the mansion. But the digging was miserable. The 5 elements 5 decays formation was constantly draining everyone, making us weaker and more exhausted with every passing moment. Everyone was drenched in sweat and struggling. In another direction, Li Rufing's forces were mobilizing at full speed. Every single unit from all the cities across Fengzhou and Qingshi province was rushing to assemble, pouring along every road toward Wolf Valley. For a full day and night, the entire army marched without stopping. No rest, no changing horses. Everyone was taking shortcuts, racing desperately to converge. This section is an author's note to readers, not story content. The author announced plans to delete about 20 chapters from earlier in the book and rewrite them. The sections being removed include the part about becoming city lord, the martial arts gathering, and the birthday tribute robbery. The author explained these changes wouldn't affect the current storyline. The author also responded to reader criticism, defending the story's pacing and power scaling, emphasizing this was a progression story, not an invincibility story. In another direction, Li Rufing's forces were mobilizing at full speed. Every unit from all the cities across Fengzhou and Qingshi province was rushing to assemble, pouring along every road toward Wolf Valley. For a full day and night, the entire army marched without stopping. No rest, no changing horses. Everyone was taking shortcuts, racing desperately to converge. Right after I leaped down, the city gates opened behind me and countless martial artists rushed out, screaming battle cries, their energy surging, looking unstoppable. Of course, against an army of tens of thousands, our numbers were nothing special. But fighting was all about momentum. My roar had given everyone a boost of courage, and they were all fired up. Breaking through the formation today suddenly didn't seem so impossible. This is another author's note, not story content. The author confirmed that all chapter revisions were complete, with about 20 chapters deleted starting from chapter 47. The removed sections included becoming city lord, the martial arts gathering, and robbing the birthday tribute. The plot about Yang Tiandao besieging Blackstone City and luring Li Rufing was kept. The author said readers could continue from chapters 60 to 61 without missing anything, and that the main character was about to charge into battle. Outside Blackstone City, everything was chaos with battle cries filling the air. Under Zhu Youtian's frantic shouting, the formation that had briefly wavered stabilized again. The massive formation resumed operating smoothly, rolling like endless waves of oppressive energy, trapping all the martial artists inside. Everyone was screaming and shouting as we found ourselves surrounded by the terrifying pressure of the formation. Nonsense. What Black Tiger Star-Lord? Kill him, Zhu Youtian kept screaming. After I caught that massive arrow bolt, I hugged it tight against my body, spun around, and hurled it back like a javelin straight at Zhu Youtian. The throw was incredibly powerful, almost as strong as when it had been fired at me. In Wangchuan Valley, dark clouds hid the moon and the sky was pitch black, like a heavy iron curtain overhead. Below, The sounds of battle raged everywhere, screaming, weapons clashing, steel ringing. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were fighting in a massive engagement that was impossible to describe. Blood, bodies, severed limbs, broken weapons, dead warhorses, everything was scattered across the battlefield. Kill! I roared with my tiger aura at full blast and swung my axe with every ounce of strength. It slammed into the first godson's long blade. The collision sent massive shockwaves exploding outward, distorting the air around us. In just one exchange, his blade nearly flew from his hands. His grip split open and bled, and his ears rang from the impact. The two grand formations had been clashing against each other. Whoever gained the upper hand first would overwhelm the other side completely. At this moment, the tide turned. Our formation surged forward with a terrifying rumbling sound, like the earth was flipping over, crushing toward the four-province army. Their ranks collapsed instantly. The soldiers broke apart in panic. In another direction, at Qingshi province's capital, the Iron Shin sect had just seized the two provinces Li Rufeng left unguarded. But before they could even settle in, they received shocking news. Li Rufeng had defeated Yang Tiandao and taken over Hangzhou and Jizhou as well. Their grand elder in the green robe couldn't believe it. He demanded confirmation that Yang Tiandao, with 4 provinces worth of elite forces, had actually lost to Li Rufeng. Li Rufeng smiled and told me he had a major opportunity to share. He reminded me that he had promised to help me enter the demon martial realm someday. Now the chance had arrived. Even though I was only at the 6th level of body cultivation, preparing early couldn't hurt. He said a monster beast spirit essence was about to emerge, the 8-armed demon dragon, ranked 31st on the Mountain Sea rankings. My eyes lit up when I heard that name. Blood sprayed and a scream rang out. Zhang Mao's body flew backward and crashed to the ground. A huge chunk of flesh was missing from his thigh, his face twisted in agony. If he hadn't dodged fast enough, the blade would have cut off more than just leg meat. It would have taken his manhood too. "I'll kill you. Kill you," Zhang Mao screamed in fury. At dusk, a cold wind blew. Bayou Manor sat in a large town south of the city. After the Yellow Turban Army took Hangzhou, most townspeople had fled, leaving the place deserted by evening. Inside a room, dozens of figures were hiding. Men and women, old and young, all of them skilled fighters. Candlelight flickered, creating a tense atmosphere. I squeezed my huge hand, and the steel arrow in my grip bent like rotten wood. I tossed it on the ground. What a fierce Vajra! The man in the black mask stared at me, his energy surging as he steadied himself. "I underestimated you. But since I came here today, I intend to make you pay something." He had only heard stories about me before. In another direction, the 2 black-masked men who had escaped during the chaos were sprinting through the dense forest, ignoring their bleeding wounds. Behind them, Zhang Mao rode a regular horse with his men in furious pursuit, hoofbeats thundering and battle cries echoing. His war horse had died earlier, and ordinary horses weren't fast enough to catch the 2 masked men. Under my gaze, the big man's scalp went numb. He was both scared and angry, staring at me, but couldn't bring himself to say what he wanted to say. The pressure I gave off was too overwhelming. Even though he knew I probably wouldn't touch him, he didn't dare test it. His whole body felt uncomfortable. I placed one large hand on his shoulder, my voice calm and flat. The man in the purple robe smiled, and his eyes grew brighter, like 2 crystal gems. Threads of powerful mental energy began seeping from them toward my mind. His plan was clear. First use the body-strengthening pills to get my attention, then strike with a secret technique to control my spirit when my guard was down. He thought he had succeeded. "Li Deputy General, from today, I am your master. You see your master before you. Why aren't you kneeling?" In the dark night, 4 or 5 figures were speeding through the darkness toward the west side of the city, their eyes cold and emotionless. Among them was the purple-robed man. Despite having his arm broken and ribs shattered by me, he was somehow moving again. But his movement was strange. He was floating through the air. This was the power of his mental abilities. By afternoon, the Western Gate Hall Master still hadn't returned. Elder Ouyang grew suspicious and finally sent people to search the entire city. The search lasted until late at night, when someone discovered something wrong. Severed body parts were found in a sewage ditch, apparently killed not long ago. Shocked, they immediately pulled out the remains and rushed back to report. I was confused but quickly took the body-strengthening pill and thanked the young sect master with a salute. He looked down at me coldly and said my great achievements were already known to him. What I deserved would be given, but what wasn't mine, I must not take. I saluted and agreed. It was obvious he was trying to intimidate me, the classic approach of a stick followed by a sweet date to bring me under control. After slapping that peak 8th level expert to death, I turned around and looked at everyone with a smile. You all saw it. I didn't start it. He came at me with a blade, and I had no choice but to kill him. This isn't my fault, everyone gasped. The Holy Fire Sect fighters stared at me in shock and disbelief. They couldn't process what I had just done. How stingy. Only 2 body-strengthening pills, and he's supposed to be the young sect master. He can't even match a home master, I grumbled, pulling out a pale golden bottle. At least the Western Gate Home Master had given me 3 pills. This young sect master's entire body only had 3 total. No dignity befitting his rank at all, though it probably had to do with him not being a body cultivation practitioner. Someone who didn't use that system wouldn't carry many of these pills. In the dense forest, Lin Xuanji walked ahead with his group, back straight, looking pleased with himself, glancing around proudly. Behind him walked me. At 288 centimeters, I looked like a giant beast. I had gotten even bigger since being in Hangzhou's capital. My weight had reached 1,820 jin. My arms looked even thicker than Lin Xuanji's waist. In an instant, screams filled the air, arms and legs flying everywhere. Countless beams of light poured down from above, and people exploded one after another like ants being crushed. Run for your lives? We've been tricked. The Imperial forces set us up. Damn Yang Tiandao. Explosions kept going off as silver-white light continued raining down without stopping. I charged forward with everything I had, cutting down shadow dragons that lunged at me along the way. The formation's energy blasts kept hitting me, making me cough blood. Kill him. Don't let him escape. A silver-white shadow dragon spotted me and roared. Instantly, countless shadow dragons from every direction rushed toward me at once. A terrifying roar erupted from the chaotic forest, like the end of the world, shaking souls, sending white ripples spreading 7 or 8 miles in every direction. It nearly blanked out people's minds. Yi Wuji and his forces, who had been pushing deeper into the area to eliminate everyone, all froze at the sound. This is bad. The 8-armed demon dragon spirit essence has emerged. The mountains shook and screams filled the air. The earth-splitting mountain-crumbling formation kept firing blasts of terrifying energy in every direction, shattering boulders and collapsing entire hilltops. Everything was absolute chaos. Deep within the dense forest, a deafening roar echoed, accompanied by an endless wave of savage killing energy, as if some kind of super predator had been unleashed. I lunged forward with my massive body, dark and overwhelming, killing energy rolling off me in waves that nearly suffocated everyone around. My 2 huge claws slammed forward, fast and vicious, giving no time to react. Shimin Kanjiing's hair stood on end as terror gripped him. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Demon Martial Realm. I had actually reached the Demon Martial Realm. He thought it was impossible. The entire place went silent. Everyone stared at me in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. I had killed a 10th level elder from the Falling Sand sect without hesitation, just because he wouldn't back down. I turned my eyes to the other 10th level elder from the same sect. My voice was calm. You too, old man. Kneel and apologize, or you'll end up just like him. The elder's face changed dramatically. When we hit that massive fog barrier, the ground shook violently. Outside the formation, Yi Wuji and his forces felt the tremors and looked up in alarm. Those people are shaking the formation, Yi Wuji shouted. Are they insane? Are they trying to break through by force? One of the Imperial fighters asked in disbelief. They're not breaking the whole formation. They must have found the edge and are trying to smash their way out. The mountain forest erupted with terrifying shockwaves again, blinding lights sweeping across, deep rumbling sounds carrying for miles. Dozens of experts were fighting fiercely, but the various sects were clearly at a disadvantage. They had been trapped in the formation for so long that it had drained them. Passing through the gray fog barrier had caused further backlash. Now they only had 60 or 70% of their full strength left, which made fighting back extremely difficult. When Su Sheng reacted and started shouting, I was already moving. I smashed my axe into a boulder. It cracked apart with a single blow, weighing thousands of jin. I grabbed a chunk of rock weighing over 100 jin. It was as long as a grown man, but in my hands it felt like nothing. I lifted it effortlessly and smiled. 5 days had passed since we left Diansong Mountain. The news about what happened there spread across the entire eastern region at incredible speed, causing massive shockwaves. Every faction and martial artist was stunned. Yang Tiandao had schemed against 18 sects, trapping them in a devastating grand formation. In my room, I sat with my massive body exposed, muscles piled like a mountain of flesh. I stared at Lin Xuanji with furrowed brows and asked him bluntly if he had been playing me. He quickly denied it, insisting everything he said was true. I went silent, my expression dark. According to Lin Xuanji, his sect did possess a monster beast spirit essence from the Mountain Sea rankings, but there was apparently a catch with that particular beast spirit. The 2 men and 1 woman who had been secretly watching me all changed expressions when they realized I had detected them. The woman in green robes snorted coldly and flashed out of the shop, appearing near me with her clothes fluttering. The old man and the young man followed right behind her. I looked at them and asked who they were and why they had been watching me. 3 days passed. The entire eastern region was in turmoil, with armies marching everywhere. At the Holy Fire Sect headquarters, a massive courtyard was lit with burning braziers. Hundreds of the sect's strongest fighters stood in formation. Elders, hall masters, everyone, all silent with heads lowered, visibly tense. In the courtyard, explosions rang out everywhere as 2 figures, one massive, one smaller, clashed furiously, generating unimaginable energy waves. My huge body charged forward like an avalanche, unstoppable and overwhelming. I relied on my thick defenses and kept pressing toward the eastern envoy, striking at him relentlessly. He roared furiously, dark light exploding from his body as he pushed his techniques to their absolute limit, his powerful palm strikes shaking the entire area. I sprinted through the forest at full speed, my 290-centimeter body creating gusts of wind and afterimages. Every step cracked the ground, leaving small craters behind. With my copper skin, iron bones, and over 2,000 jin of weight, I moved like a charging beast, generating explosive force with each stride. My giant axe was strapped to my back, not slowing me down at all. At night, campfires flickered across the noisy forest. Armies from various sects kept arriving, spreading across hundreds of miles. I sat in the grass, roasting a fat wild boar. It was a decent size at around 600 jin, but compared to my 2,000-plus jin, it was small. So now it was my dinner, turning golden brown and filling the air with a delicious smell. Inside Tiger Pass, the atmosphere in the massive mansion was solemn and oppressive. Over a third of the entire Great Zhou dynasty's military strength had gathered here. The Great Hall was packed with experts. Yang Tiandao sat motionless in his chair, his expression dark, white-haired, and armored. No matter how much the others in the hall criticized and accused him, he ignored every word. His entire focus was on Tiger Pass and the battle ahead. On top of Tiger Pass, Yang Tiandao had been scanning the opposing crowd ever since he arrived, searching for someone specific. He hadn't forgotten who had taken the 8-armed demon dragon spirit essence during the battle at Diansong Mountain. He knew I was nearly 3 meters tall with a body unlike anything in history, and now I had fused with the 8-armed demon dragon. With 18 sects gathered for this alliance, he was certain I would show up. Below Tiger Pass, everyone was buzzing with excitement, still stunned by the battle that had just happened. They praised the warrior who had once defeated Yang Tiandao. He had killed Hong Yuan so effortlessly, truly unmatched. Under Alliance leader Chun Jingtian's orders, several more generals rode out to the base of the pass, issuing challenges and hurling insults up at the defenders. Not far away in the forest, Huang Fusong appeared but stopped, not daring to get too close. He was afraid of disturbing me and kept pacing anxiously at a distance. Their 18 allied sects boasted countless experts and geniuses, yet one single Yin Chongtian had everyone too scared to step forward. It was almost laughable. Were there really no exceptional talents among the 18 sects? Of course there were. Now you want to talk? How interesting. You really are shameless. I almost don't want to kill you anymore. Tell you what, I'll leave your body in one piece, I said with a grin. Then I squeezed my two massive claws together. Horrible screams poured from Hulian's mouth as his bones crackled and snapped. His entire body was crushed like a bug between my hands, turned into a bloody pulp, no longer recognizable as human. Monster beast spirit essence? Everyone's eyes narrowed with shock and anger. They realized I had been waiting to make demands at this critical moment. Li Dao, monster beast spirit essences are incredibly rare. Even if you want one now, we can't produce it, Alliance leader Qin Jingtian said, looking at me with a complicated expression. Then I'm sorry, but my life matters too. You all saw how strong Yang Xingan is. With my current power, I simply don't have the ability to guarantee victory, I replied. Everything was in complete chaos. A million soldiers charged forward screaming, forming a massive human formation with unstoppable momentum, like a mountain range slamming forward. Even the grand formation outside Tiger Pass couldn't hold anymore. The entire fortress was shaking violently. The 100-meter-high walls trembled. Layer after layer of the defensive formations outside Tiger Pass were being torn apart one after another. The ruins were far from peaceful. Fighting raged everywhere. The remaining people had dropped all pretense, tearing into each other over rare treasures, willing to kill without hesitation. The Great Zhou dynasty had stood for over 1,000 years. A millennium of accumulated wealth meant countless priceless artifacts, many of which the various sects had never even seen before. Even a single item leaking out was enough to drive people mad with greed. The enormous imperial capital descended into chaos. Countless imperial soldiers were closing in from every direction, their momentum like a steel ocean about to swallow everything. Someone discovered Ji Wushuang's gruesome death, and terrified screams erupted from the crowd. The prince is dead. A giant beast killed the prince. It was that Li Dao. Someone stop him. Avenge the prince. Two figures, one massive, one smaller, slammed into each other head-on. A terrifying explosion ripped through the forest, shaking the earth, light rolling everywhere, accompanied by howling wind as waves of force swept outward in all directions. Lin Xuanji and Huang Fusong were both horrified and scrambled backward as fast as they could. Even so, the shockwaves sent their blood surging and nearly overwhelmed them. Those with weaker cultivation fared even worse. Deep in the forest, the three of us didn't dare stop. We kept pushing further because at least 7 or 8 experts were secretly following behind us. They hid their presence and trailed silently. This was dangerous, and it made me frown. I looked back several times. I knew I had been spotted. With my enormous body, hiding was nearly impossible. The scene was terrifying, shaking the entire area. The forest was reduced to ruins everywhere, trees and boulders shattered as if hit by missiles. The ground was covered in blood, body parts, and scattered organs, the smell sharp and bloody. I stood in the center, my massive body dark and imposing, radiating thick, killing energy. Several of my scales and spikes had been broken off, but that didn't affect me much. The entire world was in uproar. Countless factions were shaken. For ancient experts at the 9th transformation had all died horribly. It was shocking and hard to believe. The forces behind these 4 old monsters were especially terrified. These men had been supreme elders or vice sect masters in their respective sects, their lifespans nearly exhausted. They should have died of old age long ago, but had used expensive life-extending pills to survive until now. But now they were all dead. Zhuang Longtian's broad body strode into the cave hideout, scanning the area. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. This was clearly Yang Su's prepared escape route, he said. He picked up a black book from the table and glanced at it. Blazing Fire Mystic Force, for characters on the cover. He smirked. Even the sect's top-tier martial arts manual is here. He shook his head coldly, noting it was an inner energy technique, which was useless for me. An old man sat with his back to me, short, thin, wearing an ancient black robe. His words seemed to carry a deeper meaning. Indeed, the world is falling apart. Why isn't an elder like yourself resting at home instead of wandering around? I asked, my voice heavy and slow. I'm a restless man, the old man replied. I can't bear to watch the world collapse, yet I have no way to stop it. So I wander everywhere, seeking what little comfort I can find. Sect Master, you must be joking. How could I not believe you? I've always followed your every word without any doubt, I said, forcing a smile. Is that so? Then why did you kill my disciple? Zhuang Longtian stared at me with piercing eyes. Xianqing repeatedly disrespected me, and this time he tried to kill my friend. I had no choice but to act, I replied. I see. So it was for a friend. The author also included a note saying the second chapter from yesterday counted as today's, and they were taking a day off. The forest was a complete wreck. Craters everywhere, destruction all around. Huang Fusang caught up from behind, his face blank with shock. He still couldn't believe it. Zhuang Longtian was dead. I had killed Zhuang Longtian. No, wait, that wasn't Zhuang Longtian. It was clearly an unfamiliar middle-aged man he had never seen before. How could this be? The forest was a bloody mess with bodies everywhere. My massive demon form had shifted back to normal. I pulled a pair of pants off one of the dead bodies, struggled to fit them on, grabbed my axe, and quickly left. The Shadow Corp sect really was impossible to shake. Even after traveling this far, they had still tracked me down. That strange blood-red figure from earlier was especially bizarre. Although I had killed several of their people in a row, they kept coming. Moonlight poured down like water, covering everything in silver. Over a dozen war horses were galloping toward the funeral parlor, each carrying a powerful fighter. Behind them was a horse-drawn carriage carrying someone inside. After such a long ride, even the war horses were exhausted, panting heavily, white foam forming at their mouths. Nearby, the mad swordsman and the second and third Wu brothers were shaking with terror. They turned and fled without looking back. I shot after them like lightning, my massive body trailing savage energy, and swiped one claw at them. These small fry were only at the 4th or 5th transformation. They weren't even worth activating my demon martial form for. I stood on a large boulder in a dark, endless valley, full of mountains, rocks, and vegetation. The air smelled of decay, like a forgotten corner of the world. My face was serious, my giant axe strapped to my back, as I gazed into the distance. The aura had disappeared. It was no longer as intense as before. The Underworld Emperor's blood was truly strange. It knew how to hide itself. Don't worry, I have a way. Inside the massive Beast King Valley, I shifted back to human form. Wearing a pair of shorts stripped from Xianqingzi, my 357-centimeter body stepped forward with my huge axe on my shoulder, completely unafraid. Heavy booming sounds kept rolling in from outside. Lights surged, energy churned, and invisible pressure crashed toward us like a tidal wave. Xianqingzi followed silently behind me, his expression shifting. After smashing my claw into Lin Xuandong's head, I turned my massive head toward the other three and let out a terrifying dragon roar. Endless black sound waves spread rapidly outward. The entire sky visibly darkened at incredible speed. Space rippled. The earth shook. The other three instantly felt their scalps go numb. For the first time in hundreds of years of calm composure, deep fear gripped them. Every hair on their bodies stood on end. In the endless blackwood forest, darkness stretched on forever, swallowing all light. Even someone like me could barely see far inside. Without special magical tools for navigation, even a martial saint could get lost in here. Li Yuanji's group had a black-robed elder holding a compass that glowed with faint green light, guiding their direction. Everyone followed closely. Li Yuanji led the whole group into the city. I walked among them, my 363-centimeter body towering over everyone, shirtless with my giant axe strapped to my back, scanning the streets on both sides. Yanjing City was unbelievably huge. The streets were wide, even wider than 6-lane highways from my previous life, lined with tall, magnificent buildings on both sides. People bustled everywhere, and the whole place was lively and prosperous. Outside the Great Hall, while the first prince and second prince were at each other's throats, an old eunuch in purple robes came out carrying a feather duster. He announced that the king wanted both princes inside. Li Yuanji exhaled with relief, his dark expression improving. He snorted coldly, ignored the second prince, and beckoned me to follow him inside. The second prince watched with a gloomy stare. I figured my physical body had already reached its peak. What I lacked now was inner energy. Since I couldn't break through to the blood-flesh demon god level anytime soon, I decided to focus on raising my inner energy as fast as possible. I pulled out the mystic jade mirror from my pack. My rough, oversized fingers gently touched its surface, and I channeled my inner energy into it to be purified. Waves of powerful, refined energy soon flowed back from the mirror and re-entered my body. After punching Pan Long away, I turned my massive body toward the king and queen, clasped my fists together, and spoke in a low voice. Your Highnesses, fists have no eyes. I struck too hard. Please forgive me. My powerful body radiated wild strength and an overwhelming presence. Strong, dominating, unmovable. Everyone stared in shock, the whole crowd erupting in astonishment. They couldn't believe what this giant had just done. In front of the massive army, I stood at my full 371-centimeter height, my voice booming like a demon god, my presence shaking the entire battlefield. On Duo Urcha's side, war horses began neighing in panic. One after another, the dragon horses trembled under my aura, their eyes showing fear and unease, as if what stood before them wasn't a man, but some invisible giant beast. Even Duo Urcha himself couldn't help but waver. Mountains of corpses and seas of blood stretched across the endless grasslands. 3 days later, a massive military camp had been established here. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were busy clearing the battlefield. Inside the grand central tent, the king of the north sat tall, covered in blood from head to toe. Even his hair was matted with it, looking like he had just crawled out of a blood pit. In full armor, his powerful frame and bright eyes were fixed intently on me. In the chaotic military camp, waves of soldiers were rushing forward. A terrifying aura filled the air ahead. I had just charged over but stopped in my tracks, staring in shock at a massive golden tiger seal floating before me. It was a feudal king's imperial seal, blessed with the dynasty's fortune energy. The power was terrifying. Those two nascent soul masters who had just ambushed me couldn't resist it at all. They had been crushed by the seal without putting up any fight. I burst out of the ground in a rocky area, shrunk back to human form, threw on a pair of pants, and walked forward. Zhang Feng was riding toward me on his war horse, leading several hundred men. Every single one of them looked battered, hair disheveled, armor broken, many still covered in blood. Hu Feng watched from the side, secretly grinding his teeth with jealousy. He thought the king of the north was incredibly skilled at putting on a show, rarely seen in history. But that only made him more determined to destroy the king. With the king's cunning mind, if he ever rebelled, the current crown prince would stand no chance. King of the north, now that you're awake, by imperial decree, you are summoned to the capital immediately, Hu Feng said. A brilliant light streaked across the sky like a meteor, radiating terrifying energy. In an instant, the divine spirit crossed dozens of miles and appeared outside the tea stand. He hovered above, his divine aura overwhelming, eyes scanning like lightning. Then his pupils contracted sharply. He spotted the black-robed swordsman's broken body nearby, its head missing. This is bad. Something has happened to Lord Chun. An old voice drifted into the ruined temple, making me pause mid-swing and frown. The others inside all tensed up and turned to look. They were excited. Someone called Elder Yao had arrived, meaning their sealed cultivation could finally be unlocked. Elder Yao, the muscular man I had been beating, covered in blood, screamed with joy like he had found his savior. The blue-robed man and two white-robed figures also reacted. The old demon monk led me straight to the front of the village. In the center of the ruined settlement, massive stones stood arranged in a strange, mystical pattern, looking like a chaotic rock forest. But the old monk's expression suddenly turned deadly serious. He activated his prayer beads. All 14 glowed with an eerie light, then flew out rapidly toward the sky above the stone formation. Ji Qingdao's face was furious as he pulled himself off the ground again, practically losing his mind. He grabbed his own hair, blood streaming down his face, and looked at me in disbelief. The moment he stood up, 3 heavy thuds sounded in rapid succession. 3 bodies came flying toward him like rockets, crashing in his direction. Each one looked worse than the last. Faces twisted, noses crooked, spraying blood. Led by the thin old man, I quickly found Li Yuanji trapped in a cellar. When he saw me, his eyes lit up with relief and excitement. Li Dao, it's you. You actually came, he exclaimed. Young lord, get out quickly. We need to leave this place, I told him. He climbed out of the cellar and looked around. His face twisted with rage, teeth clenched, furious at what he saw. In the dead of night, everything was silent. Then suddenly, a massive explosion erupted from the King of the North's mansion. The ground shook like a volcano going off. An endless light shot skyward, shaking half of Yinjing City. Residents jolted awake everywhere, rushing outside to look. Brilliant, blinding beams of light filled most of the sky, radiating powerful and violent energy. The chaos continued through the night. Fighting raged outside, weapons clashing loudly. After I threw down the body I was holding, massive footsteps thundered from outside, sounding like an entire army approaching. Li Yuanji's expression changed. He rushed out to where I was standing and shouted, "Something's wrong. Troops are coming. Are those ungrateful bastards turning on us too?" Yinjing City remained in chaos. Countless black-clothed assassins were rampaging through the shadows, systematically eliminating the King of Yan's trusted followers. The sounds of clashing weapons echoed from far away. Inside a temple, the towering divine spirit stood with a grim expression, sighing deeply. Across from him sat a dark figure shrouded in endless black corruption, sitting cross-legged with a calm face. In the temple area, the mysterious dark figure stood watching in horror as endless waves of Yin soldiers swept through Yinjing City at terrifying speed. Every imperial official and shadow assassin he had sent was being systematically slaughtered. The Yin soldiers moved like tigers and leopards, fierce, organized, and disciplined under their commanders. This was open rebellion. They've rebelled. They've truly rebelled. The King of the North. Inside the king's mansion, the 9 contract masters, including Dan Shinzi, were secretly amazed, their eyes lingering on me. It was clear the King of the North valued me highly. Otherwise, why would he give me something so precious? It was a fortune tree, something even they deeply coveted, yet the king had given it away without hesitation. They decided they needed to find opportunities to get closer to me. High in the distant sky, the divine spirit who had been lured into a chase and surrounded by a human formation suddenly froze. He sensed something and whipped his head back toward Golden Rooster Pass, terror flooding his heart. No, Golden Rooster Pass has fallen. As the divine spirit of that pass, he could sense everything happening there. He realized too late that these 2 fighters had deliberately drawn him away while someone else attacked the pass. The sky and earth were changing violently. As 36 contract masters kept casting their spells, dark clouds churned overhead, black lights surging, and massive waves of freezing snowflakes came howling down, growing heavier and thicker by the second. It was like a terrifying, unnatural blizzard. Even more critically, Chen Feng waved his hand, and a golden imperial decree shot skyward from his grip, radiating brilliant divine light, as if transforming into something extraordinary. The formation suddenly reversed its pressure, surging back with overwhelming force against the imperial army. Chaos erupted. Countless soldiers died instantly. The whole scene was like a pot of boiling water, bubbling with turmoil, people everywhere. "General, we must retreat. The formation has turned against us. The situation is extremely unfavorable. We should pull back, regroup, and fight again later," a deputy general shouted in panic. "Damn it! Damn it all!" The general cursed furiously. Dozens of miles away, in a wide mountain valley, masses of soldiers filled the area, armed and armored. In just a few days, a huge imperial army had gathered at Golden Rooster Ridge. On top of that, thousands of martial arts experts from all directions had come voluntarily to support the imperial forces. The whole ridge was chaotic and disorderly. The regular army soldiers at least had strict discipline, but the others were a different story. People gathered from all directions, more and more powerful fighters arriving, all watching from a distance. Discussions buzzed constantly. I paid no attention, completely focused on my cultivation. Nobody knew what I had been through over these decades. 50 years trapped in an illusion formation, then 30 more years of deliberate training after getting out. My power had reached an unimaginable level. My blood-flesh demon god form alone had been fully mastered.